And we're live. We have a fun episode and considering a blunt force discussion, this is a conversation that has taken too long to happen, and it's me. I literally, we started the conversation with Corey. I started the conversation with Corey in the summer when Cash was still in the joint, and I was rodeoing, and I'm like, the rare occasion we find somebody with opposing viewpoints to have a conversation with, and I kind of dropped the ball. And then I was like, I've been thinking about it for like 2 months, and I couldn't find it with the new page and all that stuff. So Corey, I want you to just introduce yourself a little bit to people, who you are besides just an anti-fascist revolutionary.
Okay. My name's Corey Limley. I reside in East Nashville, born and raised. I'm a videographer. I have worked on 4 feature films. I worked in the country field, doing country music, doing gripping, gaffing, director of photography. Currently working as a production stagehand, and yeah, that's about it.
Nice. So how long have you been, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
I'm 33.
33. And we got connected. Did you used to do lives with Sunni, or how did I find out who you were?
Yeah, so Sunni was like, because I guess I got into the whole live and Instagram live thing probably in around at the end of 2021, beginning of 2022. Sunni was the first person that I actually interacted with on a live, and it kind of just sprouted from there. Made a few acquaintanceships and met some other people along the way. And I think you were one of them as well. Yeah. And
it had been a while. I think we might have even done a live together like a couple of years ago, like on Sunnis, and I was just popping in and out. And I remember the reason why I think that you're willing to have a conversation is that you are very well versed in what you believe in. And you're definitely not going to back down. You like to poke the bear.
Oh.
Definitely like to poke the bear. Absolutely. So I now want to just know, and Cash we'll jump in with questions, but like, I just want to kind of get to know you. And before we do though, to everybody in the comments, I'm sure at one point we're going to get to a point where we all disagree. Please, Corey is the rare occasion that somebody gets to come on and actually have one of these conversations. So let's not
keep it respectful.
Be respectful, Cash says.
Right.
There you go. Perfect.
Tomatoes, please, no tomatoes.
Fortunately, you're at home, and a lot of people, and I'm gonna make a joke to start, you're probably in your parents' basement if you're Antifa. So don't worry about the tomatoes coming at you. All right. So
why do I look blurry, bro? What is going on with this camera? I'm sorry.
You got a storm. So we should give a disclaimer right now too. Both Cash and I have storms right outside of our window. So if one of us goes down, hopefully the other. Well, that sounds dirty. It sounds like prison. At least one of us will pick up the slack. Corey, but like, take me a little bit through your like upbringing before you got to become somebody that's so embroiled in Antifa.
Okay. I came from a lower middle class family. My father was a PGA professional. He was a Class A card carrying PGA professional. So he had multiple jobs, different golf courses, doing the head pro job, and pretty much doing the daily operations. So I pretty much grew up on the golf course, played golf my whole childhood, and even up till even recently, played a bunch of amateur events and tried to qualify for some pro events. Grew up in East Nashville, and went to public school for most of my life up till 7th grade. And I went to a Christian private school, Church of Christ, in our city, which was actually the school that my dad went to. Played on the golf team there, won a state championship. There's my state championship ring right there. Yeah. But so I pretty much, was really apolitical growing up. I just kind of was like fed some things from my family that wasn't really involved in politics. I wasn't even involved in the church, really. My grandmother is the one that took me to the Baptist church that she attended. So up till about 13, I went to church pretty ritually. Went to the Christian school that I went to was from 7th grade to 10th grade, and then I finished 11th and 12th grade at the Metro Public School that I was zoned to. Ended up going to college a year after. I took a year off after I graduated. Ended up going to a Christian college up in West Virginia. Made the golf team there, but I guess there was some discrepancies with some of my transcript, my recovery courses that I took because I graduated. But pretty much I got my first tattoo while I was up there. And once I guess the sports program at the Christian college saw that I had gotten a tattoo, they waited to kick me off the team until I registered for classes and took the loans out. So I didn't have the option to go to another school. I actually had a full ride offer to Tennessee State University, and missed out on that opportunity. I missed out on playing college golf.
What was the tattoo of?
It's actually a big cross on my back.
On your back, not even visible.
Not even visible. No.
So I'm assuming that this is the beginning of your anger with the system.
Well, it actually stems way before that. I mean, that was one of the catalysts. Another one, just to get a little personal, a little intimate. My sister was at a church daycare that my mom and dad would drop her off while they worked. My mom was a janitor at a local restaurant, and she did a lot of day porting and she was working under my aunt and worked a lot of different jobs during the day. So they dropped my sister off, and she's 2 years old, dropped her off at a Church of Christ daycare that was across the street from the job that my mom worked at. And the people that worked at the daycare let my sister go to the bathroom on her own, which doesn't make sense to let a 2-year-old go to the bathroom on their own. And so when they realized that she was gone for too long, they went to go check on her, and they found a 15-year-old boy on top of her and molesting her. The church attempted to cover it up, and rumors spread throughout the church. And somebody in the church said, if you don't tell this family what's happened to their daughter, we're going to. So I remember I was 10 years old. I was playing catch with my friend out in the front yard, and there was 2 guys that pulled up in suits and was talking to my dad. And I just have a very vague, kind of in between memory of this, but they
like vivid. I'm assuming you mean like vivid flashes and then vague of the whole thing. I gotcha.
Yes. I couldn't tell you exactly really what was happening before, what really happened after that, except in bits and pieces. But my dad, I guess, talked to these gentlemen in the driveway for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and I remember him going into the house and breaking just about everything in the house, just absolutely irate. And that was when I learned pretty much. It still didn't register to me because I'm 10 years old. I kind of have a little idea. Didn't really find out the full extent until later on into my teen years. But yeah, they tried to cover it up for about 2 weeks. My family ended up suing the church daycare. They shut it down. And there was a lot of members of that church who were also very high rank in the Christian school that I would end up going to about 4 or 5 years later. So we had that reputation already that we had shut down a church daycare, that we ruined or tarnished their reputation or their name.
They were making it your fault.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of, me and my sister both pretty much experienced quite a bit of the
backlash,
the disposition that they had for us. Yeah, the backlash that came with it. And it was very subliminal. It was very subtle, but at the same time, still, like, hindsight, you go back and you're like, oh, that's what that was. So, but
well,
I'm sorry to happen to you, bro, and your family.
It's pretty traumatic.
How's your sister now? That's a good question by Donna.
She's got her own house. She actually got a pretty lump sum structured settlement that she's still collecting on. and she's got a job. She's got 3 kids. She did suffer a lot of learning disabilities growing up. So we had to go to like the rape and sexual abuse center and do a lot of different sessions. And I even remember them talking to me, talking to her, like talking to us separately. I guess just, and again, like I said, I was still young at the time, but
and she's 25 now.
She is 26.
26.
Yeah.
So even despite all that, you still decided to get a cross on your back going into college.
Yeah.
So you're kind of issues with the church, God, establishment. I'm assuming because it look like your family is if you could choose a white collar sport, it's golf.
Oh,
like and your dad was pretty good. I'm looking it up. Like he won the Iowa Open. He had mini tours, like Waterloo Golf Class. Like he was pretty good. Like it was, tour. So again, I'm sure you were as middle class. Probably, would you say a little bit upper middle class to a point?
I'd say lower middle class. My both of my parents probably raked in a little less than maybe 90, 100,000 back then. So
all right.
Yeah.
So you had kind of a standard upbringing outside of whatever the heck happened at the church, which was really bad. You got to play at the church school. You played golf, which again, you're probably around more of the country club types, I would say, even if you're not in that circle. And then you went on to college, and then you got screwed again. And that you said that was a Christian school, right?
Correct. Yep.
You got screwed again.
Yep.
And then, but you still had the cross on your back. So so you're about 18 years old at that point. So when did the transition continue from there?
I would say after I left the church, I think that was probably that started that got the ball rolling after what I experienced at the college, especially some of the things I experienced within the college, the power dynamics, the just the culture of it. That's when I started asking questions. And so when I had Bible class or whatever, I'd go in there and to be, kind of, I guess, how I've always been, a little, very blunt, very provocative in a way, like not provocative in the sense trying to embarrass or try to, just be stupid with it. Like I actually asked legitimate, genuine questions.
The actual definition of the word provocative, not like,
Correct. Yeah. Like, so people would think, oh, he's being provocative. He's going in there just saying, very outlandish things. I had legitimate questions, and every time those questions weren't answered, or I was told, or it didn't meet the standard of what was acceptable to me, it just led me to just, okay, keep searching. And then after leaving college, that's when I started getting into the music. So I've always been interested in music. I always loved music. And so I just kind of, just veered into that lane, and it just my mind just kept, racing with thoughts, racing with questions, being very skeptic about things. And then, there was a lot of different influences, like growing up, especially at a golf course in small town Tennessee. You're exposed to a lot of the blatant racism that exists there. And so I am, 12, 13 years old, hearing every racist joke in the book. And, being that young and being that influenced, because I looked up to these guys. Like, these are older guys that were just funny. They were drunk all the time. There was funny stories that I still hold on to till this day that I'll never forget. But, I didn't have that lens on at the time to kind of like, that's not cool. Like, I don't like it. So I would either laugh along, or I would, even partake in it. And then, growing up, getting older, and then still having that, being able to look back on that, it just very much.
He'll be right back.
Very much, yeah. It just very much has rubbed me the wrong way. And
so you were more of it was more of a tin cup golf club. I was thinking the other way. So it was more of that country, small town golf club.
Yeah.
So do you still believe in God at all?
I don't. No.
Do not. So when did you stop believing in God?
Well, it's wild because, like, growing up in the church, there was rituals that I always thought were weird. And I don't know exactly how Church of Christ differs from Baptist, or differs from Protestant or Presbyterian. I don't know the practices that might be different, but there was just this big question that loomed over me. Is like, I'm in church, and as a kid, you go and do this little puppet show at the very beginning, and then you go off and you do some coloring books and stuff while all the grown-ups are being taught, from a podium. And it just the whole, I've always questioned just like the whole dynamic of how, the scriptures taught. And like, there's no, from my experience, there was no hand raising or asking questions in a church. Like you couldn't really just be that person who was a skeptic, because if you ever came at it with a skeptic mind, like I had for a lot of my life, especially my younger leading up to my older years, it's just, and then I started understanding the world a little differently, just kind of like, it just felt like the ultimate cop-out to me. It just felt like, if you reward a group of people with heaven and then you punish them with hell, that's the best way to control somebody. Like if
do you see a difference between religion and God? Because I know you've studied more religion.
I'm not religious at all. At all. Right. If I go to a church and it's a good church, then I'll hang around, and I'll attend. But overall, this is what I've found. In every single church that I've ever been to, they have some kind of teaching that isn't per se from the Bible. It's their own tradition. So I differentiate. I don't think that it's a bad church necessarily. I just think that they were taught differently. And that's why it's important for everybody who calls himself a believer in whatever faith that they have. My faith, my belief more so is in the Bible. So for me, I read the Bible. I read everything, but I study the Bible, and I go by what it says for me. And I don't try to push it off on nobody else. And that's where I feel like, people get church hurt. And when they get church hurt, they turn away from God completely, or just discount the Bible completely. Or if they've been, mosque hurt or synagogue hurt, and they turn away from that faith, when it's all we have to do is just study it on our own, and you build that relationship. You know what I'm saying? And I feel you, though. I understand where you're coming from. And like I say again, I'm sorry that you went through all of that. I'm sorry that you had all them experiences, but you're a brother here. So if you ever want to chop it up, I'm always here for it.
Absolutely. I think me and Sunni had that talk one time. About kind of like there's really two different forms of religion, especially in Christianity in the Western world. Is you have a reformist ideology of Christianity and you have a fundamentalist ideology of Christianity. I was experienced and exposed to the fundamentalist side of Christianity, and getting older, trying to find my way through that, like I stumbled upon a bunch of reformist ideology Christianity, being very accepting, very, very more liberal, like, like a universitarian, humanist church where it's just like, turn the other cheek or eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, like things like that, where they just kind of, it was very conflicting, because like, it was like, well, is the fundamentalist way of religion or Christianity, is it? And it goes for Islam too. So I don't want to single out Christianity, but it's just like if the more fundamentalist I feel like a religion is, the more dangerous it can be.
Yeah, when you look at it from a reform, when you look at it from a reform perspective, and if you followed most of my stuff, I am that. I don't know if the term reformed Christian is what I would say. Like I think the Bible thumping Christians refer to me as a lukewarm Christian, which is technically supposed to be the worst Christian, because I am accepting now. I have limits to my acceptance. Like I think things like Transgender Visibility Day is a little bit much when you've got 37 other days. Like I don't see the point. Now, if somebody is a transgender, I still would give them the same love. I'm honest in saying that that's a mental illness. It doesn't mean I think that they're less of a person until it involves children. So I do have more of a, again, if people want to get married and they're gay, I don't care. It's to each their own. And to me, the way that I interpret the Bible, which is a very, very big book, and Cash and I have talked, and even back in the day, Sunni and I have talked, and we have a difference in opinion in a lot of ways. Cash and I have a pretty similar thought process, but at the end of the day, the overriding theme, and like you said, the fundamentalists don't have this overriding theme. They're the scorched earth, fire and brimstone. Whereas to me, if I'm going to let God sort that out at the end, and I'm going to me, evangelizing is the best way to do it, which I'm not going to bring anybody to God by being a jackass. And I don't know of anybody that's ever been smashed into submission to pray the gay away or anything like that. I've heard it's worked once. I don't know. I think that we actually have to be kinder to people.
Right. That's it. says hate the sin, not the sinner. And you can't never tell somebody, that they going to hell or whatever the case is when you know that you're flawed. Everybody on this earth is flawed. We all have our own demons, we all have our own vices. And like you say, that's for God to work out. But I say live and let live.
And that's kind of what a philosophy that one of my friends, when I was going through my phase of straying away from God and the church was, because I really battled with the, being overly provocative and, jumping on every religious post I could find and just kind of like what in my mind was planting seeds of doubt, planting seeds of, exploring, questioning and things like that. Like just provoking minds is what I really was doing. But, so, and when my friend told me, he said, they say on the Christian side, they say, hate the sin, not the sinner. But us on our side, we have to hate the belief, and we can hate the belief and not the believer. So I had to, rectify that within myself that, even though I want to be, in these people's faces and it just wasn't the correct way. Like, and I think that's what a lot of atheists on our side of the aisle kind of
a good rule that I live by, bro, is I remember when I once wasn't who I am today. And that person may be who I was before. And if I could get to where I'm at today, then who's to say that they can't get to where I'm at tomorrow? Facts. So I have no place to be able to discount them or make them feel any type of way bad about what they believe because they're going through their own motion the same way I'm going through mine.
Right.
So you said atheist. So you believe you're not agnostic. You're full-blown atheist. You believe there is nothing.
Well, another philosophy that the same friend was actually telling me was because I looked up to him a lot and what he believed, because he was very philosophical and he always made you think, and it was the way I wanted to make other people think. And he basically told me, like, even though people try to differentiate and place a box around agnosticism and atheism, the agnostic atheist, which is what he kind of led me down, is that were the evidence to present itself that met the burden of proof that was accepted by me, that the agnostic in me would, if that evidence is presented, I'll believe. The atheist, if it's just purely atheism, you could be presented the evidence and you would still deny it. So I stayed in the lane of were the evidence to meet the burden of proof for me, I would accept it. Like if something came down to me and I'm not somebody, when I look at something good happen, whether like, oh, I've been praying for this to happen and then it happens, that has to be God. Like I was always that person, like, well, there's like, I asked for something very materialistic and then I get it. And then somebody else is praying for water or praying, for their 4-year-old to survive brain cancer and they're not answered. So it's like, it was just one of them things that I still always grappled with was like,
okay.
Can I offer you this? Let me offer you this, brother, because I'm a philosopher myself. I love philosophy. I read. I'm a nerd. You follow me, you know that.
Oh yeah.
What kind of computer you got?
iMac.
Okay. Could you take that computer, right? All the pieces apart, right?
Mm-hmm.
Throw them in a bag and shake that bag up as many times as you want to. Is that computer ever going to be a computer?
Negative. Well,
it will not.
Yeah, no, not unless you.
It will not.
Yeah.
It would never function as a computer, even though you have all the parts to be able to make that computer. That computer, for a fact, someone created that computer. 100% with your human logic. You understand that someone had to create that. We are more complex. We are more complexly put together. Our universe is more finely tuned to be together than that computer. Could that just happen by chance?
Well, I mean, that was another thing I grappled with intelligent design was that, it doesn't, to me, I can't really speak for anybody else's perspectives or anything, but to me, there's really nothing intelligent about the design that I'm looking at. Like when I go out into the world, when I see things, like I see babies born with no limbs, I see, some of the most tragic events occur to the best people, and I see the worst people get, everything.
I understand that. I get that 100%. What I'm saying is that computer couldn't create itself,
right?
No matter what, using your own flawed human logic. you know that computer can never, it has to have a creator. We know this.
Right.
So how can we not look at everything around us, including ourselves? Like you could use the people were born maimed or people were born blind or whatever that is. That's a moral thing of how we feel like God should operate. What I'm saying is them existing in the very first place, that baby being born with a deformity and still going on to live a very capable, functioning life and become somebody great. That can't just happen by chance. Statistically, if we do numbers, like I'm big on numbers. Like I love it, right? Statistically, it's impossible.
I remember when I got out of college, I started dabbling and smoking the cannabis and stuff like that. And what I would catch myself doing, I'd be outside and I would look up at the stars, and it's just like, even what we know, and we might think we know, like a lot of people, especially on this earth, think that we know so much. We don't really know hardly anything. It's kind of like, we got a pixel and we try to make a judgment off of one pixel what the entire image is.
100% correct.
And that's what kind of like threw me off, is that, with religion, and as old as it is, if we were just so happened with no knowledge to be brought up on an island that, that had storms come through, that had lightning, that had, all these natural disasters occurring, like we wouldn't have the capability to, not only would we not be able to communicate, we wouldn't be able to understand what the hell that lightning was. We wouldn't be able to understand what the hell is this hurricane that just came through and blew all of our stuff.
We had a time period like that.
Yeah, like, and so, but during that same time period, it's kind of like when the philosophies of a creator arose, because it's like you want to have, like, you're given, this realm of existence, and then you are left to either guess what's going on, or you're left to continue to question. And I feel like with theists, I feel like they have adopted an answer, or have created an answer for something that we should still be on the endeavor of questioning. And I feel like
that's the cool part about spirituality for me, right?
Right.
I don't question any of it.
Right.
I mean, I do, but it's not something that drives my day. I got questions, and it's cool to think about. And that's how I look at it as entertainment. It's really cool to think about. But one thing that I know, this isn't what I believe, what I know, using my own human logic, right, is that there has to be a God. 100% has to. And when I say God, I don't mean it in the sense like somebody sitting on a throne in the clouds waiting to strike you down and put a pitchfork in your ass and send you to hell. I mean, someone created all of this,
right? Because
of all the things that I see us as humans, we create. So then when we'll say the Bible, or we can use the Quran. I've read them both, right? But I use the Bible for argument's sake. And the Bible, when it says that God created the heavens and the earth, and the heavens, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And I read all those things. It clicks in my head because I see how things get created by scientists, by us. If we can do the amazing things that we can do, and we know that we're not the top of the food chain all the way, we're still figuring things out about ourselves.
Right.
And we don't know how we got here, but everything works its own thing in nature to let you know that God is real. If it makes any kind of sense, like the whole back of a turtle shell equals a calendar. You know what I'm saying? Or how birds know exactly when to fly, or how animals know when a storm is coming, or how bugs know when they're supposed to, come up out the earth, or how frogs know that there's all these things in nature. I like to look at nature and use it to equate it to God, because everything around us is in tune. We're the only thing that's out of sync. And then when you go correlate that to the Bible, why are we out of sync? Because we fucked up, because of sin. There's something fucked up within us that makes us question everything, that makes us want to do the wrong things, that makes us, and it's not like we want to do them. It's our body. Like a person that does drugs, you want to go do drugs because you know how it makes your body feel. But in the back of your mind, you talk to anybody that was a heroin addict, I know a lot of them, or an opiate addict, they'll tell you, like, I really don't want to do this. I don't want to do these drugs, but I can't stop myself because I get these pains and I'm aching, and all of that stuff. It shows you the separatism within yourself. Your spirit doesn't want to do the wrong things. It's your flesh.
Right.
Your flesh wants to do the wrong things. So again, you equate that to the Bible, and it explains everything totally of why this is. It gives a complete explanation, and
Would
it
that be
doesn't all
free
the other
will?
religions. You say what?
Would that be free will?
You have free will, but the spirit wants what's contrary to the flesh, and the flesh wants what is contrary to the spirit. This is the eternal battle that you're in your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Your body wants to do things that your mind doesn't want to do. This is where we call a conscience. You have a conscience that tells you shouldn't do something. You shouldn't do this. It's wrong. But then you're like, oh, but it's going to feel good. Oh, but I'm going to get gratified from it because I'm going to get this money. Oh, you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
This is the thing. And I know you don't like religion, and I understand that. I completely
like
get it.
it
There was a time when I got pushed away from the church completely, and I started practicing in the Nation of Islam. And then I left that because I seen all the bigotry and racism in that. And I went over and studied the Hebrew Israelites and became a part of that. And then I seen the racism in that and left that alone. Then I studied real Judaism, and I still kind of like the real Judaism, but then it led me back to Christ. And then it's like, it's just full circle. It always comes back. And it all still rings true when you really have you really studied the Bible on your own, like without no pastor or without nobody telling you nothing, just you talking to God and reading that book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read it a few times. Yeah,
and bro, it just clicks. It clicks for him, and it's just like, okay, this makes too much sense. How does this person know this? We just barely discovered within the last couple hundred years about there being actual rivers underneath the ocean, literal rivers underneath the ocean, but yet God told us to Job. We literally just discovered all the little sulfur balls in civilization that got wiped out by some catastrophic event where it seemed like everything got torched as if fire and brimstone came from the sky. And it's in the place of Sodom and Gomorrah. There's literally a lake right there. What is the Dead Sea that can't have nothing in it? There's no life in it. There's no fish. There's no nothing because nothing can live there because of what happened with that event. Right. There's all these different things. All these different things that says, okay, there's got to be something to this. These people were not as smart as us back in the day, as far as technologically, as far as we know. How the hell did they know all these things? How could this poet, who we would call a poet, know all these things? You see what I'm saying? It's just too many things that
I just want to talk about the start. And this I want to pose a question to you because, like, again, first off, do you like are you anti Joe Rogan or pro Joe Rogan?
Very neutral. He's there's some things and there's some I feel like he gets very reactionary and plays to a certain base
in the crowd. So he had a show with Cat Williams, and it's a question I've been asking since I was very little. And Joe Rogan was an atheist, and I think now he's agnostic to questioning. Like he's moving back, he's moving into that more of that realm. And right. Cat Williams and Cash have very similar ways of talking. Only difference is Cat Williams was high as shit on the episode with Joe Rogan. By midway through,
I love me some Cat Williams.
He was toasted. But they brought up the fact that, and they believe that even if you believe in the Big Bang, there's an element missing. So question I have, Corey, is how do you believe, because Cash kind of mapped out all of the different intricacies that are part of a master design, which is flawed. I'm going to agree with you. When you've got all the tragedy we see, it is flawed. Where do you believe the design came from?
Well, it's hard to tell because, we're still expanding as science, progresses. We're able, and the reason they call it the Big Bang is because, that is pretty much with the technology that we have at our disposal today. That's the furthest we can look back. Is there's obviously an origin. Just how it kind of like when you do like
I gotta stop you real quick because I don't know if you following. I love the sky, right? So I've always been fascinated with the Hubble telescope. But more so now with the James Webb. Have you heard the latest news with the James Webb and how they have to redo the science of what they thought when they said that we are expanding?
I haven't read it.
Cat Williams mentioned this a little bit.
Now they're saying that we are not expanding and there is actually an end. There is actually an end to outer space. It's not infinite like they thought it was. We are not expanding.
Right. So historic.
Take away that thought. Go back to your philosophy on the Big Bang. Go ahead and try to explain that thought process.
Well, it's just you pretty much there. for there to be nothing, people, a lot of people on the theist side will say, well, there had to be something, like something. You can't just make something into nothing out of something. So it's
Right.
just it begs the question, like, the personification of God, which, giving him a gender, giving it a more of a personification, is kind of, to me, just, it doesn't really make logical sense, because it's like, if there were to be a creator and we are this species on earth that who we feel like we're important. Like, I'll be honest, like we as humans, we feel like that, like we have, a lot of people have to have a purpose, or you'll just eat fast food and stay at home until you die and rot. But so people feel like, to have a purpose, that we have to feel important. To be honest, the nihilistic, side of me really, feels like I don't think there's really much importance in our existence, because there will be a day where we don't. And there was a day where we didn't. Like, there had to, and then there were certain questions that I had, as far as like the sun being created on the fourth day. It's like, well, if you count days, by using the sun, and the sun wasn't created on the fourth day, where'd the other 3 days come from? And it's just, there was a time period.
Master plan.
Yeah, there was a time period where we thought the sun was the center of the universe, and then just kind of like it just develops into, like, a lot of people didn't know. Like, honestly, we're talking about a philosophy that dates back to when people literally thought that the sun and the moon were at war with each other. And every time the sun would come up, it means it defeated the moon. And every time the moon came up, it defeated the sun. And then we understood, like, well, are we, a lot of skeptics would say, well, are we rotating around something? Like, is there something else going on that we don't know? So that's where, like, the conceptualization of time came about, and people, people saw that the sun was starting to get lower. And when the sun got lower, it got colder. And then, and that's where a lot of, like, I feel like religion kind of intertwines, is because on the 25th day, you had the sun, at its or the 23rd, 24th is when the sun's at its lowest peak in the sky, and then on the 25th day, it rises and it starts going back up, and it's the equinox. So you had people telling stories through what they were seeing in the sky, like, and I feel like a lot of those stories, kind of sprouted into conversion, and starting to like now people that are starting to question what was happening, now it's like a forced conversion. It's like, we're going to take this all the way west, and you had the Crusades, you had the Inquisition, and you had people, just pretty much telling you, like, you have to adhere to this. And we celebrate St. Patrick, and a lot of people are, what was St. Patrick famous for? He banished the snakes from Ireland. Well, what snakes was it literal snakes? And they're like, no, he literally waged a crusade and killed all non-Catholic, non-believing, skeptics. And go ahead.
See, but this is what you're talking about, is what man has done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you talk about, being created, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that people feel important, that's because of man's ego.
Mm-hmm.
Man's ego makes himself feel important. We've forgotten the first real mission, the first mandate. The first mandate for man was to what? Live. Bring heaven to earth. This is why earth was created. Earth was created so that God's will can be put here on earth, and we could be the vice regents on earth, the ambassadors of God here on earth. As above, so below.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it all existed in the first place. Man messed it up when he allowed disobedience into himself, to disobey God.
Mm-hmm.
It's simple. And it was all part, for what I believe, from when I read the Bible, it's all a part of a plan to bring man back into the fold, to being what he was always supposed to be, which is the end result anyway. But the key is for man to choose God, because that's the only difference between us and angels, God, all of that, is that we choose. God already knows. The angels don't have free will. Humans do. God wants humans to choose him, to choose to want to be his children, to choose to want to do his will. And we've got ourselves all mixed up, and we've had so many different choices brought before us. Before, it was just one choice. Don't eat from this tree. We'll use that analogy or the story, however you want to choose to believe it. Just don't eat from this tree. All right. And then all the other rules came. You only had one thing that you couldn't do before. Now check out society now. We live in this nation with a bunch of things you can't do. They're called laws.
Mm-hmm.
And each time we have more and more and more and more laws. And look at how people are able to obey the laws and be an upstanding citizen and not break the laws, but they couldn't obey God's will back in the day. So the whole thing right now is for us to get back to being able to obey God. We're okay with obeying a judge or obeying the police officer or the governors and Congress people that put forth these laws, but people don't want to obey God. And what's the thing that we have to do to obey God? Be good to one another. Love one another and love God with all of our heart, mind, body, and soul, and get this back to being a utopia, which ain't going to be done until it's all the way done.
Right. I think it's a term in the Bible. Is it render to Caesar's what is Caesar's?
Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's. Right. Exactly. Yeah. And once man gets to doing that, see, God knew that we was never going to do it. Mm-hmm. He already knew. He knew that some would. He knew that some would, but he gave everybody the equal opportunity. And this is the way that I like to describe it to people, because you got these people that are like the MacArthurs, right? The people that believe in like the Calvinism. They believe in it's all predestined. Everything that you're going to do is predestined. I disagree with that. Mm-hmm. Yes, God knows everything, but he's rooting for you. Mm-hmm. God is rooting for you. See what I'm saying? And this is what I mean by that. So us as human beings, right? God knows. Before I get into it, I'm going to give you 4 things that I can prove is God's will. I'm going to do that first, and then I'm going to keep going. There's 4 things I can prove without a shadow of a doubt is God's will. And I ain't need a book to tell you this. I didn't need religion to tell you this. This is from my own philosophy, sitting in a jail cell by myself with nothing but time with me and God. All right. The first part of God's will, number 1, is for you to live, to be born and live, because you're alive. And you can't change that unless you kill yourself, which would make it unnatural, which would put you outside of God's will, would be your choice, not God's choice to take you when he wants to take you. Mm-hmm. Number 2 is to grow, because no matter what you do, unless you do something unnatural like kill yourself, you're going to turn from a baby into a man, into an adult. So you can't stop it. That's natural. That's God's will. Mm-hmm. Number 3 is for you to choose, because even if you choose not to make a choice, you're still making a choice not to choose. Mm-hmm. Can't help it. It's naturally written in you to make a choice. And number 4 is to die, because you cannot stop yourself from dying. You can delay it, but it's not natural. When you have somebody on a breathing machine or on life support when they're brain dead and their organs can't function on their own, that's unnatural, and it takes you outside of God's will. So I say all that to move into this part of it. Us being alive on this planet have started to adopt all these different ideologies of what we're supposed to be. Religion is not God. Religion does not make people better. It was the intent at first. And I use the Israelites. We'll use that story from the Bible. The Israelites were a stiff-necked, stubborn people. God said, okay, I'm going to set these rules for you guys. You obey these rules and it'll keep you within the fold, and you will be unto all people, my chosen people. And they couldn't get it right. And he's telling them the whole time through the Old Testament, look, just turn your hearts back to me and I'll forgive you. But if not, I'm going to destroy you and punish you from the 4th and 5th generation, or the 3rd and 4th generation, however it goes. And they still couldn't get it right. So now here we are in the modern day and age. We still can't get it right. So this is where the story of Jesus comes in. Jesus came, or Yeshua, whatever you want to call him. And he came to be almost just like how Adam was. The only difference between him and Adam is Adam wasn't born. Jesus was born with the Spirit of God already dwelling in him. Adam was created from clay and had it breathed upon him. So when he came into the world, when Jesus came into the world, he was perfect. And he showed people how to make the right choice. This is what people miss. Jesus always made the right choice that was pleasing to his Father. That was it. And he showed them how to do it. And he knew that they weren't like him. Like, we're the same. Yeah, I got a body like you, but my spirit comes from God. You can have this spirit too if you will follow me. Just accept it and then start to walk and live this way. And that's where, and then be sorry. Be sorry when you mess up, because you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to be perfect, but talk to God. Get that relationship back with God. That was his whole thing. Okay? So I'll use the Quran for all the Muslim brothers and sisters that might be watching right now. Adam's function when he was first born or first came into this world, Adam's first function was to just please God. That's it. Just to please God. And when he fell, see, in the Quran, it says he fell from heaven and fell to earth.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And when he fell from earth, or when he fell from heaven to earth, he had his descendants. And when his descendants came into the world, they were separated from Cain's descendants because Cain, remember, killed Abel and all of that. So they weren't to mix with each other because they wanted to do what was wicked, and these people was following God. Right. And then they started the mix up, and Satan came in and caused confusion and started playing music, and they started partying on the Sabbath day and doing all these things and having babies with each other. So then Satan got them to bow down to things, and Satan got them playing different instruments and wearing makeup and all this other stuff. So again, providing them with different choices because it seemed fun. They were living in the spirit. These people was living in the world. And when they mixed up, that's what got mixed up. You had some people that wanted to live in the spirit, but now they're fighting, trying to live in the world. It's the same exact thing that we have going on today. You have people that want to live in the world, and you have people that want to live in the spirit. Then you have people that try to live in both. I'm guilty of it. Sometimes I try to live in both. My walk ain't all the way right, but I'm sorry. That's the whole key. And it's not like God's sitting with a magnifying glass saying, Cash, what you're going to do. But I digress from that to move forward in the last part of what I was about to tell you. Yep. So with them 4 things, that's God's will. Your life is not God doesn't, this is my opinion, everybody, don't freak out, right? God doesn't know what choice you're going to make. He's rooting for you. Yes, he knows your end destination because he created it that way. You're born and you die. Everything in between is up to you. It's up to you to make the right choice. It's like a current. No matter what you do in this life, if you was to swim in against a current that is way stronger than you, you're going to drown, right? No matter what, you're going to drown. And the current's going to sweep you away to the destination that it's got for you anyway. Life is God's current. You're going to be going in this life, and you're going to go every single place that God wants you to be. I was going to end up in prison no matter what I did. No matter what I did. And proof of it is I got indicted on a conspiracy that I had nothing to do with. And I ended up in prison. You see what I'm saying? But the only choice the only thing that I had that is mine was my choice. Was I going to go to prison and revert to being old Cash and be fucking people up and gang banging and selling drugs? No. I stayed true and made the right choices every step of the way. I did my best to show mercy to people. When I had to fight, but I showed mercy. I didn't overkill. I only did what I had to do to sustain me, to keep myself from being harmed. And I helped I helped them when I was done. You see what I'm saying? Right. I didn't go in there and sell drugs to be able to make my life better. I didn't beat people down to make my life better. It's about the choices that you make. You're going to end up every single place that you go. I always was going to have the childhood that I had. I was always going to get my head busted when I got my head busted. I was always going to end up in that car crash. It's going to happen no matter what you do. Life is going to happen. The only thing you have control over is your choice. And in them choices, God is rooting for you. I feel like God's like this. Oh, come on, Cash. Come on, man. Make the right choice. You could do it. Come on. Keep coming closer to me. Keep coming closer to me. That's it.
Right.
So Corey, we'll get in. I mean, we'll get into politics, but before we get there, because I think some of the stuff Cash is explaining how his belief is,
right,
and how again, there's gonna be some people that get upset on my side that'll be like, you can't interpret the Bible; it's the one word. I'm like, well, okay. Cash has his interpretation based off the prayers that he has had and the dealing and the conversations that he has had. So when you were talking earlier about your issues with belief and your issues starting from the Big Bang, you were pointing out the flaws in human logic.
Right.
You're not pointing out, because to me, it's like, and I've watched Bill Maher's thing on atheism, that whole movie he did with like Religious or whatever the heck it was, which was brilliant. It was brilliantly done. And I'm like, it's funny and I get it. But at the same time, there's this element of, you're right, faith is pretty silly. But at the same time, believing that there was nothing came from nothing is pretty silly too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, yeah, I think, and I don't know if y'all follow this same philosophy either, but the person who is the smartest in the world will admit they know nothing.
Facts.
And I feel like that's kind of like the philosophy I kind of go with is like, I don't ever want to, when I go in, like, I'm an observationalist. So if I go into a field that I'm not very well versed on, like if I don't know much about cars, if I go into an auto mechanic shop, I'm gonna be an observationalist. I'm not gonna go in there and say, well, this says this says that, this is what, I think this is how this works. Like I'm gonna look and I'm gonna learn. And I try to take that with me everywhere I go, and the fields and the things that I am well versed in. I want to plant seeds. I want to teach. I want to do things like that other people might want to learn. And I feel like there was just such, and I know this will go into the human aspect of it, but it was just kind of like there was a bunch of condescension in my experience with the church and folks when I would engage with on religious stuff. It was very, just kind of very condescending, very, like, well, I know this. It's kind of like, there's things that I'm sure us three, like, there are things out there that we wouldn't know a damn thing about. Yeah, nothing. Like, there are things we'll go into, like, whether it's IT, I don't know a damn thing about it. Y'all probably more well versed than that. But if I go, yeah, exactly. But if I go into that, I want to go in, I want to learn, and it's like if I if somebody comes into my field and I'm teaching them, to be condescending is you don't learn anything. You don't,
100%.
It rejects it, and I think just with my personal experience, which did, it did influence a lot of my beliefs along the line, but it was just it was a very bad natured, disingenuous condescension that just came along with, the interactions that I anecdotally had.
Take away all the politics and the anti-fascists and that we'll get into. Do you think you could ever believe in God again?
I guess that's the big question is like, my standard of proof for things, just as a natural skeptic myself, the burden is so high. Like, and I know for a lot of people, especially faith-driven people, the burden is fairly low, is because like you could see something that you perceive as a miracle. The way I look at religion for me is like, if I showed y'all a magic trick, and you're under the illusion of this magic trick, you'll be in amazement, just like if you rewound the tape, 200-300 years and you did a magic trick in front of people that never knew, like they would just be amazed. And like, it's kind of like, I just feel like I've been taught the trick, and now I'm not under that illusion anymore. Like now when I look at the trick, it's like, oh, I know how this goes. So when it comes to like the burden of proof for me, if there were something to meet my burden of proof, which is already admittedly fairly high, yeah, I would absolutely. That's the agnosticism in my philosophy is.
Yeah, because I read you as more of an agnostic, and I get why you're an atheist. I think that, and I don't want to speak for you. And like your comment before, I've always said one thing specifically for myself: the person that thinks they're always right is the person that is 100% wrong. So right. I agree with you on that one. Based on, and that's why I say this with trepidation. Based on just hearing you talk, you're an atheist from anger, and well understood anger. But you're agnostic based on belief. I mean, the actual definition of agnosticism is searching. You're always searching.
Right, correct.
So I understand a little bit I understand where you're coming from. Definitely.
I get it.
So you went through all that stuff, and obviously this is why I like having conversations with people, because they always have a reason why they get to a place. And unfortunately in this world, we no longer, in this country, even more so, we don't allow ourselves to get to a point to understand each other. And that was the original philosophy behind Be the Change, and that's why Cash and I like clicked so well in the beginning, is we have this constantly. And trust me, I know you could poke the bear, and I know you and me could do this all day long and we'd have a fucking blast doing it. But if we're actually going to get anywhere on a higher level, it involves this,
right?
And then this, and like going back, like, and that's why I'm interested to see. Now I know a little bit of the backstory. Now I know why you are why you believe a little bit more the way you believe. So then take us more into the political realm. As you called yourself an anti-fascist revolutionary, how did you escalate from the bullshit that happened to you in college, your upbringing, all that stuff? How did you escalate into almost a leader of this group that could be considered problematic?
So I think a lot of it is,
okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is geographic because, me coming from an urban city, my family is, I would say, I don't have that big of a family, just me, my mom, my dad, my sister is really, and then I have some distant relatives that I haven't seen in years. But my aunt, she's what I would pretty much say is a blue dog Democrat. Very conservative in a lot of beliefs, but just just didn't align with the conservative Republican ideology that would make her vote Republican. And my dad voted for Reagan in '88. It was just I come from a very Southern, blue dog ideology that kind of just was like planted in me when I was, in my teens, later on into my years, where my aunt, who was a lesbian, she passed away back in 2015 or 2014, actually.
Not from being a lesbian, right?
No.
Okay.
No, but bad dementia, and I didn't see her for about 5 years, the last 5 years of her life. We didn't even know she had passed away until about 2 years after she passed away. But she, she was very, pro Obama, pro Clinton and things like that. But not to the point where it's just like signs in the yard and bumper stickers and stuff like that. It was just like little things that were. So fast forward from, because I was a diehard, very obnoxious liberal when I, especially when Bernie came on the scene, I think Bernie, kind of tapped into a lot of the animus that existed on the left, like in the left wing side of politics, because it was always that that faction of Democrats and liberals that they were very weak, and I still view liberals even till this day, just very weak, very and as we was talking about condescension earlier, very condescending when interacting with people, not able to convey their messages and being, that's, I guess that's an inherent liberal thing. So when I was politically homeless, like for a few years after Bernie, because I started finding that Bernie was just the same old thing. And a lot of us, so it's just kind of like a funnel to like, okay, we can't go with Bernie. We can't go with the liberals, can't go with Democrats. Obama is the king of the drones and droning people. And we can't get behind that because I don't compromise what I found a lot of liberals do. They compromise their morals for, being a part of the clique, being a part of the group.
They pick and choose. It's the liberal, and the reason why, and I'm going to interrupt you. The reason why Democrats win is because their beliefs, their group is thick as thieves. And the conservatives lose because, for example, if I talk a little bit about a pro-choice belief, I'll get alienated from my side. Whereas the left,
right?
You're on my team. I don't care how shitty you're, this, that. So they bring them all in. So I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, and so I got to experience a lot of that. And so fast forward to Trump's election, I turned on the TV one day and I saw that there was a black clad group of and my cousin had taught me a lot of like the European anarchist. He showed me a lot of things that were going on in Europe, which was a lot of the black bloc protests and a lot of the black bloc groups that were in Sweden and Europe and throughout like Germany and different places. So I was reading, I was like, damn, we don't have none of that over here. And I turned on the TV one day and I seen that there was actually in Nashville. So I contacted one of the local chapters and told them, a little bit of what I believed. And because especially during that time period, man, it was very hard to get accepted into, any sort of faction or any sort of affinity group that was very skeptic of people coming in. Because, even on the right, there was a bunch of infiltration going on. You had to be very skeptic. So we had like different
infiltration from like the Proud Boys or whatever getting into Antifa to try to
that, or even law enforcement. We had to deal with a lot of that. There's a lot of
So
documentation.
do you believe law enforcement was trying to get in with both sides?
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I mean, that's historically a fact. You know, I mean, it's just, and you know, and crazy enough, you know, when you see Waco, when you see Ruby Ridge, when you see instances like that, you know, where, or even the Bundy Ranch, like even till this day, I can't really go back into my memory bank and tell exactly how I felt when the Bundy Ranch thing was occurring. But you know, now that I am where I am politically, like I would be extremely pro Bundy. You know what I mean? Like Clive and Bundy and you know, all of them. Like I supported what they were doing. I don't
Freedom.
government infringement. You know,
Right.
big land grabbing, things like that. Like it was just very.
That's how I feel about Waco. So I mean, I get that. I mean, as long as I can exclude and make sure that there wasn't any young children being molested, then I understand where you're coming from. Bundy, I feel like there was a little bit of young issues going on. Koresh, it was like he'd wait till they're, I don't know. That's their sickness. But from a freedom, guns, land, I understand. Same with Ruby Ridge, all of that.
Right.
I think the narrative has been controlled by the people that control the narratives.
Right.
If you know what I mean.
Right. And that's the thing. Is like, even though I am completely on the opposite end of the political spectrum, there is that commonality and intersectionality that I have. Even
Are you really on the opposite end of the spectrum? The more you're talking,
it doesn't sound like it, bro. He sounds like one of us.
I know. I don't. So I'm confused. So right now where we are, and I'm assuming you're still homeless politically, because you can't tell me Biden speaks for your belief system in any way, shape, or form.
No, hell no. That absolutely not. No, I mean, to me, for somebody to garnish power through being a segregationist and being one of those blue dog Democrats that started their political campaign and their political career being a segregationist and being overtly racist and things like that, like you don't get a pass. 20 years from now, 30 years from now, you don't get a pass.
I heard that, bro. Preach.
So what do we actually disagree about?
I think there's a lot of cultural things we would definitely disagree about. You know, I'm very, you know, pro LGBTQ, very pro abortion. There's I guess the cultural divide.
Are you pro abortion or pro choice?
I'm pro choice.
So do you?
I see what you're saying. Yeah, pro choice. Yeah.
Do you believe as though there's just, because again, I mean, I think you and I got into it over some of the racial issues with, you know, Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. But when it comes to pro-choice, I've had the argument with my own following that although my own life I believe to be pro-life, I have trouble thinking that based on our Constitution, even though I do believe religiously it's wrong, based on our freedom of religion in this country, I think it's very difficult for us to be able to mandate what is not necessarily science and more of a religious belief. Mm-hmm. So as much as I think it's wrong, I think it's hard to say what is law on that one. Now, Roe versus Wade, I always say was bad law. Like that it was constitutionally, that was bad law, but I think it should be the state's decision. But when I say states, and Cash in a second, I think it should actually I think it should be a vote per state. And I think that there should be a graded level, because I don't think anybody, including you probably, Corey, think it's okay to have an abortion at 8 months, 9 months. Very few people believe that. I think there's a logical middle ground of, I mean, where would you say it, Corey? And then Cash, go ahead. Sorry.
It's hard to square the circle because, like, in the same instance as we was talking about earlier, what Cash was speaking on about religion is like God, I don't know if you either said he does know what you're going to do or he doesn't know what you're going to do, but what you're going to do is what you're going to do. So it's kind of hard to square the circle simply because the only way you could prevent such a practice from happening is through government infringement. Like you would have to illegalize, you know, the practice, which, you know, then would in turn you would have to say like I need an entity to make sure that this practice stops. So if it is, you know, a free will, you know, thing, it's like you have to, especially because I guess my stance on abortion is like, if it's going to happen, I want it to happen in the most humane way for the women who are getting abortions, because I mean, you could do irreparable damage, in the historic ways of abortion. I mean, abortion is probably is probably the same age as life itself. Like
so you would believe more in the pill, like the area of the pill. So the pill for the abortion is up to like 10 or 11 weeks, and then it's humane because then it doesn't damage the baby. There's no scrapers. So you still have a pretty. I mean, you're probably under 15 weeks, so you'd actually be considered more on the conservative side of voting than
I was just about to say that,
than the Democrat side of voting.
Well, yeah, I think there's definitely limits. Like, I don't think somebody should carry a baby to term and then at the very last second, which I don't know of any cases like that. I mean,
very few, but there is a few. Very few.
I mean, get cold feet. I could probably understand. Like you get so excited about something, then you get cold feet, and you're like, I don't want this. I mean, it's a very sensitive topic. It's just I still can't just jump on the side of government infringement.
It's the blanket thing. It's like we tend to generalize everything. So, for instance, right now I'll make a shocking headline if I was to tell you Cash Kelly is pro-choice and Cash Kelly is in support of the LGBTQ plus rights of them being able to get married and stuff like that. Right. Now, then you dissect it and you say, well, what do you mean, Cash? Well, I'm pro a woman that is raped or a child that is raped or molested by her father getting an abortion. I would not want a woman to get an abortion. I don't support abortion, but I support your right to free will, to do whatever the hell you want to do. That's what I mean when I say it, because God gave us free will. As far as the LGBTQ plus stuff, I say I support them being able to get married because, that ain't got nothing to do with me. If they want to get married, they can get married. I'm against trannies in libraries. Can I say that on here?
Transmissions.
Okay. Transmissions in libraries and taking kids to drag shows and all that. But then here's the thing. I know, again, it's free will. If the person that owns that library or runs that library wants to have them go there and do that, I have the free will to not let my kids go to that library.
Right.
It's a tough one.
It's a tough one, but I'm just using my own.
But
I would never want to go and watch.
It's hard to legislate morality, and I get that, Cash. But at the same time, we do legislate morality. We say murder is illegal. We say robbing is illegal. And to me, there's a certain level where, and I'm with you in the sense that it's like, we keep saying parental rights, and if a parent wants to screw up their kid, great. But sometimes I do believe there has to be something step in culturally. And I know that goes completely against my belief on freedom in many ways, but I do think there needs to be a limit on stuff like that's where, and I'm like you, Cash, get married. If you want to get a sex change, I don't want the government paying for it. I don't want there to be any kind of tax dollars going to your sex.
But then it comes down to the religion thing. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and unto God what is God's. And what the government wants to do with that money, it's not yours no more.
Right. And here's another thing about the cultural divide. Like, I don't know exactly what y'all were into, growing up, but when I was watching wrestling, back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
I watch it now.
Now you're talking Cash's language.
I mean, there was probably nobody as much of a fan of wrestling as I was, especially.
Don't challenge me on that, bro. Don't you do it.
I don't know. I watch WWF documentaries. The Attitude Era was probably my favorite time of all time. But but so if you even go back and because there is this hyper fixation on sexuality today, and it's when I go back to those days when I was younger, I remember Goldust, I remember Val Venus, I remember these gimmicks that were and we all know wrestling was very geared. Yeah, there was some adult people that would watch it, but it was really geared towards kids. We know wrestling, like it's a kid's.
Now it's geared towards kids. Before it was geared towards men.
Right, and that was when blood was still allowed, and there was still like disclaimers and stuff. And I didn't have like, so, and even go back before then, and you go back to the days of Freddie Mercury and the music industry of men painting their fingernails and wearing tight clothes, having the crazy 80s hairstyles, and just, wearing makeup, and Twisted Sister, like all these different, even Marilyn Manson, like just that time period, there's always been, and it's funny because Tipper Gore, Al Gore's wife, was one of the biggest anti, Twisted Sister, anti, 80s rock bands, like, saying that it was promoting violence, it was promoting all these things. So there's always been this cultural divide, and I think today we're hitting a boiling point, or about to reach a flash point, where it's just like, the lid's going to blow off. I mean, the like what we're talking about, especially as far as LGBTQ and trans issues and stuff like that, it's not a new thing that we're talking about. It's older than we are, and it's just, and it's gonna be here when we're gone, and it's just one of those things that it's just, I've just kind of, I was that person that if I wasn't around something, if it wasn't in my intermediate circle or immediate circle, I had a disdain for it. I had a disposition for it. I looked at it differently, and typically what humans do, if they're not exposed to something or a different culture or something like that, it's very like, ugh, like gross. And so the more I got around people that were in, like, whether it was the Muslim community, LGBTQ community, just any different community that I could tangibly be around somebody and see their culture, be around their culture, see how they are, it alleviated me of all those dispositions and all that disdain that I had. So it grew to where, it was like I started doing research into history, like Stonewall and the first Pride Parade actually being a riot against the police, and it took me that way.
But do you think it's a little ridiculous that currently we've got 30 different days on the calendar that are in support of something in the LGBTQ XYZ community?
Well, I think that's what's crazy is the more you draw, like the more it's kind of like a weird thing that happens, but it's like, and I'm sure, especially on the right, the conservative right side, like the more there is a push against Christianity, the more there is a support for it. It's kind of like, the more there was protest against the police, the more that rose up a support of the police. The more there's a, push for happy holidays.
It's to further the divide.
Yeah. The louder the sides become.
And I think with the 30 days and the multiple like days of LGBTQ commemoration, things like that, I think it is more, honestly, like it on the surface, it's, we're in support of this community, but under the surface, it's, a big FU to conservatives. It's just more of a provocative, like, and not a provocative in the way that
divisive.
It is meant to, kind of troll. It is meant to kind of like,
it's meant to piss people off and get them to snap and go at odds with each other instead of doing what we're doing right now and having a dialogue, a respectful dialogue at that. Right.
Yeah. I mean, you can't have that. I mean, because that's the thing, like the government wouldn't sustain itself.
So, I mean, I think back to what I said, one of the areas that I think we had some contention with, and I still want to get into what you've actually done with Antifa, but with BLM, what is your opinions on Black Lives Matter?
So I love this question. So when I did a lot of protests in Louisville, in the case of Breonna Taylor, we had a lot of protests. It was months and months on end. When I got on the ground out there, what we were told from the jump was to not have any association. Don't do, like, the BLM organization in Louisville was very liberal infiltrated. It was very, it wasn't anything. It didn't have anything to do with the street activism that was going on. So there was a huge disconnect between this, trying to proliferate BLM on a national scale, but create an organization that was more geared towards reforming the system. As we go back to the talking about reformism, like they were reforming the system by partaking in it. So you had a lot of people on the street that had a lot of distrust with groups like that. So when it came to BLM, there were groups in certain cities that I experienced where the BLM, like the street activists on the ground, had nothing to do with the organization of BLM as far as it being a conglomerate or a organization. And running for office and things like that. Like there was and that's still the thing with
no money went to black people, not a single dime.
Right? No, definitely not.
I didn't get shit. I know that.
And I think that's where a lot of the distrust came, was that there was funds that were coming up missing. There was funds that wasn't being allocated to a lot of the street activists that were on the ground. So you had a lot of street activists that they adopted the BLM. I mean, because the thing is that a lot of people don't understand is that BLM was a new phenomenon about 2012, 2013. It came on. Michael Brown, right in between Trayvon Martin and Michael. Yeah, right between those is when you had that's when people started seeing hashtag Black Lives Matter. It just started as something to say to again provoke conversation, to kind of just be in your face with it. But before like there were protests that predate Black Lives Matter. Now so these protests are comprised of humans, of people who were not attached to BLM. So that's why I think you had a lot of liberals kind of take BLM and made it into what liberals like to do, and make it into a reformist organization that didn't make a dent in.
And I think it's because they chose shitty people. Like, no offense, and actually offense meant not towards you, but towards them. Like, to me, if I was going to be as somebody that does have a heart, if I was going to look at a case and go, that's something I would march for, it would be Tamir Rice. Absolutely. There was nothing. Like, you brought up Breonna Taylor. That situation's bullshit. Michael Brown, piece of shit. Sorry. And then George Floyd, also piece of shit. Like, again, nobody deserves to die.
Yeah, I'm about to say that's a little harsh, because we draw the line right with the situation, because again, you hate the sin, not the sinner. The man with the George Floyd situation, yes, he was out of line. Yes, he was high. Yes, he had an overdose. Well, I don't know if I can say all that on here because allegedly.
No, he had I'll say it. He had an overdose.
Okay, well, but still, Derek Chauvin shouldn't have did what the fuck he did.
I never said that Derek Chauvin wasn't a bad dude. Like, I'm not saying
so he didn't die because he was a piece of shit. He died because the cop was a piece of shit.
But I'm saying all these, and the reason I'm saying these three cases were really, Trayvon maybe a little bit closer, but he still became kind of a shitty kid as he got older. Like, he had a history of stealing stuff. So we managed to pick the worst cases, knowing that people on the right that are going to be a little bit less sensitive are going to say absolutely not. Like, Michael Brown was a straight up, and I'm going to say it, he was a thug. He was a straight up thug. And the whole narrative about the hands up was proven a lie. And then you've got Breonna Taylor, which that case, there was issues with the actual their surveillance. There was issues. There was the crooked cops that did the surveillance. We found out later. But the actual narrative of what happened that night was drastically disproven. Her boyfriend was shooting. They weren't sleeping. They were in the hallway. All of that was found to be completely a false narrative. She also, the whole, like, she's a nurse. That's a false narrative. George Floyd would have died probably anyways of a drug overdose. Tamir Rice was an innocent 12-year-old that could have actually galvanized people to a problem. And it's a blip on the radar at best.
Well, I think there's a concoction when it comes to events like this, because a lot of people will think, like, when riots occur, like especially after George Floyd, people like to say that, like, there was no concoction, like the response to George Floyd was specifically a response to George Floyd. I feel like a lot of the responses, especially if you go back to the LA riots, to the riots of the civil rights. I mean, the whole country rioted for 9 days after MLK was assassinated. I think, like, a lot of the outrage and a lot of the riots that occur, I don't think they're solely just regulated to or exclusive to the events that you know, because we get caught up on talking about whether, you know, George Floyd should have died, whether he overdosed, whether things like that. However, like the outrage to that it's a huge concoction of generations of outrage. And
But I think we were improving as a society up until, and I'm an Obama voter. I'm a Democrat growing up, all of the above.
Yeah.
The country in the 90s after Rodney King, I believe as though we started to become less and less and less and less racist. Now, I've seen some things as I've gotten older. I went to a school that had desegregation, and I realized that those kids today they were getting shitty schooling back in the early 2000s, late 90s, all of that. They were not, even though we went to the same school, they were putting them in like, oh, we'll put them in the city classes. Like, that's bullshit. So that's where I can still see some problems. But the actual tone of this country was getting better and better and better. And then Obama came into office. I voted him in. And next thing you know, racial tensions, and you might feel as though they never were getting better, but I'm pretty sure everything that I can discount, we were getting better. And now we're at a place where we're back to before Rodney King at this point.
Well, how I measure it is kind of like, let's say you have a scab. If your scab isn't fully healed, if you pick at it, it'll bleed and it'll reopen the wound. But if it's fully healed, and like, for example, if we were on a trajectory of getting out of that state of just racism and things like that, the scab once pulled off, let's say Rodney King, let's say George Floyd, those things, or Mike Brown, those things, you know, we would still be on an upwards trajectory. I don't think something is an anecdotal event, or even, you know, a few events like Tamir Rice, like Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, all these things. I think if we were healed to the point that we were at a place where we could say that, where we could be proud of, like, we wouldn't bleed, and I think that's
impossible.
Yeah. But here's the thing.
Go ahead, Cash.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, right? When we talk about, you know, being healed from the past or whatever the case may be, and we were on a good trajectory, we would have stayed on that. It wasn't that George Floyd got killed by Derek Chauvin that made this all happen. It wasn't that Mike Brown got killed. It wasn't that Trayvon got killed. That's not what did it. It was the media. Because in the same year that George Floyd lost his life, there was only 9 brothers that was unarmed that was shot by police and killed. Whereas if you look on the other side of it, there was 18 white men unarmed that was killed by police. Right. So they made it a racial issue when it should have just been a fucked up cop issue. It shouldn't have been about race. It should have been police brutality. And they put the race thing on it to make another wound, so a wound wouldn't heal, because the trajectory was heading in the right direction. They did that simply to make white people and black people be at odds with each other, while simultaneously making liberals and conservatives at odds with each other, because white liberals we love black people so much and we just care for you and we're so sorry for everything, while still fucking us and not giving us nothing or helping us do anything. And then you got the conservatives while saying, well, the cops are good and we back the blue and we got to stand with our police officers, instead of saying, that cop was fucked up, which was happening on the George Floyd case. Everybody was like, yo, this shit is foul on both sides. They're like, yo, this is too much. They're like 9 minutes. You know what I'm saying? This dude's dead for like 5 of them. Well, this is wrong. Yeah. But they just kept fueling it with media, saying white cop, racist white cop kills unarmed black man, showing them in a suit and tie and doing the things that they do. And then when a white person, and this is how they do it, when a white kid ends up dead, it's...
Well, here's what I feel like. I feel like a lot of the politics and the divide, and the political divide, do stem from a lot of geographical issues, and as long as also economic, because I do believe if we did focus more, if we took race out of the equation and we focused in on, let's say, class, I think you would find a lot then you have the government outnumbered, because you have more people in the lower class that
January 6th.
Yeah.
January 6th.
Yeah, a lot of poor, like, white, conservative, rural people, you know, they stick together, you know, like I'm from the South, like I've been to small towns, and, you know, it's just I feel like the culture of police, I feel like, you know, is very lopsided. Not only if like I said, even if you take race out of it. Like I went to school at that Christian, just for an example, I went to that Christian school that I went to about 5-6 years ago. There was a guy there, I'm not going to say names, but there was a guy there who had a lot of pull. I'll say that his family like had a lot of money, donated a lot to the school. Well, he got drunk one night after graduation and ended up killing a mom and completely paralyzing a 9-month-old infant.
Damn.
And so all of these letters started coming out. Look, the letters of recommendation to the judge to be lenient on this kid. Well, I'm gonna say man. I mean, he was 18, 19 at the time, so he was an adult when it happened. But so you had the president of the school, you had all these, you know, all these different like high-ranking people within the school and the system, sending recommendations to the judge saying, you know, take it easy on this kid. He's a good kid. He never gave us any problems. Well, the judge gave him, I think, a year in prison, a year in jail, and I think 3 or 5 years probation. And it's just like when I think about it, if that were to be me, whose family didn't give to the
got fucked.
There wouldn't have been no recommendation letters. If anything, it would have been like, yeah, you know, this kid, he was kind of an outcast here. You need to take it hard on. So I feel like even outside of the racial component,
I think it's more socioeconomic. I would 100%
socioeconomic, and once people can realize that, then the race shit will mean nothing. Because I live out here where it's whites, blacks, Mexicans, Asians, Arabs, everybody, and when we're in the hood, everybody's struggling. We all get the same treatment. It's the same shit that goes around. You know, but people don't talk about that enough, and the news won't talk about that enough, because then people will come together and it wouldn't be no divide. It wouldn't be nobody hating each other because of their political ideology. We're like, yo, we all getting fucked. You know what I'm saying? So I got your back, bro. You need something, I got you. Yeah. You know, and then the other issue that I have, the other issue that I have with Black Lives Matter is the fact that they would only come out to race bait. They didn't come out to say, you know what? We got to stop killing each other. Yeah. We got to stop, because we upset about a couple police officers this year that killed an unarmed black guy, when motherfucking the dude that we're over here defending actually already got like 4 bodies. He done killed 4 niggas in the hood just 3 years ago. You know what I'm saying? Nobody wanted to come out and talk about that shit. Nobody wanted to come out and say
that as well.
Yeah. You say what?
Antifa's guilty of that as well.
Well, maybe they are. That's part of the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. You know, there's, you know, especially when cases like Tony Tempa, Daniel Shaver, there was what was y'all can help me out, the kid's name that was, I think it was in Michigan. They lit him up and like through the window. He was another kid that was very libertarian. I can't remember his name.
You named the 2 that I was thinking in my head. I can't remember the Michigan guy's name, but yeah, I know what you're talking about. So multiple white cases.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there was a lot of cases that didn't get a lot of like, and you know, when the video came out of Daniel Shaver, because Daniel Shaver was from Tennessee, that's what it got on a lot of our radar. You know, just things like that, where it's just like there is a cultural standard within law enforcement that just kind of like, you know, there is, you know, you got qualified immunity, you got all these different things that are safeguards that allow, you know, power hungry people to get away with, you know, going into communities that they don't belong to. You know, this isn't just in urban communities. This is you know,
lower income
rural, even rural communities. You got people that have felt the brunt end of law enforcement. You know, they're like, and it's not just within, you know, Black communities or urban communities where there's so much distrust for the police. I mean, I don't think before, you know, there was a general consensus, like before Black Lives Matter, before Trayvon Martin, that was just like, you know, one thing that the Aryan Brotherhood and the Nation of Islam would agree on is, you know, FTP. Like we don't like the cops. We don't like so it's just, you know, or the government, you know, like there's always this disdain for government interference, government overreach. And that transcends race. That transcends, you know.
So what are your beliefs on the police?
My beliefs on the police. Well, my mom's dad, my grandfather, he was a crooked cop. He he actually lost his job. He got caught with a prostitute on the job, and he was a big heroin addict. So he would take drugs, he would plant drugs, he would use the drugs that he took. He would go into communities that again he didn't belong to, and he would do. I mean, it was like a culture thing. It was the Nashville Metro Police that he worked for, and it was a culture thing. I feel like the problem with police nowadays is, like I said, you have these suburban, folks that become police officers, and then they drive 30 minutes to go patrol communities that they don't belong to. I feel like if you were to, let's say when you clock off the job and you're not, and you're a cop, you clock off the job, and when you go home, you're going into the very home that you patrol. That, I think that would alleviate a lot of the.
I agree. I think most people would agree, but there's not a lot of people in some of these areas that want to be police officers anymore, because you mentioned the word qualified immunity. It's not really a thing. And I don't think it should be a thing, but it's actually gone the opposite way. Whereas, like, if you look at the case of George Floyd, the fact that the actual policing rule, he was, aside from the amount of time, which you can look at the backstory of the issue with the ambulance coming and the timing in the wrong direction, his knee placement, what he was doing is based on what they were teaching. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, he was doing nothing based on the book, nothing wrong. So then they talked about police officers that, I mean, you can see it statistically, they've left in droves. And I understand. And Cash has a whole thing that's like, back the true blue. And like, you have this crazy, what do you say? Is it back the true blue?
Back to true blue, not the crooked cops. Fuck the crooked cops. It's always going to be fuck the crooked cops. It's the fuck the crooked communities. Fuck the crooked people, fuck the crooked politicians, anybody that's crooked. If you're not doing the right thing, fuck you. That's it, until you can do right.
But I don't think that's the whole on policing. And again, like, and you Corey, unfortunately, you have a perfect storm of all of these shitty things in your background that are painting this image that, and as somebody from the outside of it, to tell you, I'm like, I can't speak to your story, but I can tell you my experience is, unfortunately, fortunately, I haven't had to have the same interactions. Now, I've actually reported a police officer that it was 2012-ish, 11. I was in Dallas. He took a black dude leaving a club for no reason. Like, he was getting kicked out. He was 15 feet away. The cop came up and suplexed him. And I told his buddy, I wrote down, I go, give me a call. I will do what that was a shitty cop.
Right.
But I still don't think, I also think their job is brutal in this day and age, because we've taught people that cops are all bad. So I think their job gets harder and harder. So I just have to say that I still I'm a back the blue person for the most part, knowing that there is some crooked cops out there, because if we don't back the blue, we have anarchy, which is kind of the background.
Yeah, but here's the thing. This is why that's dangerous to do, because then somebody will use Corey. Say Corey's like, well, I'm the same way with back the true Antifa, or I back Antifa, even though there is some fucked up people that do some fucked up things. And then on my end, I could say, oh, well, I support gangbangers, you know what I'm saying, that support the community, but I know it's just a couple bad ones out there that you want to shoot shit up. We can't do that. And I mean, we can, but it's a bad decision.
But that's what's happening to policing, Cash. Because who's going to join? Somebody like me going to join the police force right now? No, I don't want to.
Maybe
people that are going to join the police
force. If they would let me join the police force right now, I'd join the police force 100%. 100%.
I feel like it's right now. You're either going to get beta males that are like, I want to do the right thing, or you're going to get those guys that are like,
I'm gonna bust the ass. No, I'm going to bust your ass. I'm gonna give you a fair shake, and if you get out of line, I'm gonna bust your ass. That's the kind of cop I would be. That's the kind of cops we need. I'm going to give you a fair shake. I'm going to treat you with respect. I'm going to treat you like a human being. But if you get out of line, I'm not going to hesitate to pull this thing on you.
Are y'all familiar with the Christopher Dorner situation?
Yeah, why do I know that?
So so even, for example, you had Christopher Dorner who on the job, I would say
you talking about David Dorn?
No, Christopher Dorner. He was a former officer at LAPD. Beginning of February 13, committed a series of killings against the LAPD in Orange County.
Yeah, and the reason, and if you go read into more of it, what he did was his partner on the beat with him was pretty much doing very crooked things. And there was an instance that sent him over the edge, was that his partner was pretty much harassing a disabled man, or it could have been a woman. I'm not sure. I know it was a disabled person that the partner of Christopher Dorner was doing some nefarious stuff with. And so when he tried to take it to the higher ups, he was demoted and he was fired from the LAPD. So he attempted to what we would picture, what we're talking about. Hey, you see something bad, you want to be a good cop. And I feel like there have been cops, and there have been many cops even come on the record after they leave the force, come on and say, when I try to go to my higher ups, the problem is, like, if the corruption is happening on the lower spectrum of, like, on the lower end, and on the beat cops and your people out there patrolling, what happens when the corruption is higher up? And there's a lot of favoritism, there's a lot of politics at play, that so if you try to go to the higher ups, and like Christopher Dorner did, and got fired for pretty much trying to go against his own partner, and kind of like demoralizing, what they would view as demoralizing the police department by putting a stain on it, tarnishing it. He went on a rampage, and they burned the house down that he was in, because if you take somebody like that in, the story gets bigger than, if you give him a trial, it's going to come out, well, why did he do this? What's the motivation? What happened? And then it would expose the police department.
Right. They had to kill him.
Yeah. So you had to kill him.
Like the movie Training Day.
Yeah. And so we witnessed that. We witnessed, what happens when, and the LAPD it has a long history of nefarious things. Like, I mean, they got enforcers units in there that are
absolutely
that play, and it's a full-blown Nazi, group within the LAPD that call them. They have a name for them. I think the executioners or something like that.
Well, we got a whole Nazi brigade in Ukraine, but we give them billions and billions of dollars. So
exactly. So I feel like, and in America, the American government, just as you speak on Ukraine, like we have a long history of arming the ultra-nationalist Nazi groups in certain countries to destabilize the region of whoever it's a proxy war. And so you have, like, sending funds to, the Nazis in Ukraine to destabilize Russia, to keep, Russia from taking. Because, I mean, like, Crimea voted on a referendum. 95% of the Crimean population voted to join Russia.
I know.
And
people don't know that.
Yeah. And, and so you had Western Ukraine bombing the hell out of Eastern Ukraine, the Donbass, the Luhansk region for decades. And, and we were funding that. And, and there's just and that's another, reason that sent me into my, revolutionary leftist stage, was seeing what the Western governments and NATO and countries like that would do by destabilizing, certain regions.
I don't think you're a leftist.
Bro. I don't think you're a leftist either.
You're not a leftist. You identify more, I guess, within yourself with them, but with your ideology is not. You sound like one of us, bro. On a couple other topics, you got different opinion, but for the most part, you sound like us. You do not sound like a leftist. A leftist would not even be sitting here right now saying none of the shit that you're saying.
No.
Yeah, I steer clear from a lot of leftist spaces, man. There's a lot of puritanism and a lot of crazy things that go on within leftist space that I got to experience. We can go into some of the stories here in a little bit. But
I see a well-functioning adult. That's what I see. I see a person with a fucking decent brain. That's what I see.
So going into 2024's election, like, what thoughts go through your mind?
I mean, we're at a historical point, a flashpoint that, we don't know what's going to happen, man. It's very, the dynamic is very crazy. I mean, I'm not going to vote. I'm not voting. You're not looking at a Biden voter. I'm not voting.
Definitely not a leftist.
Yeah. I just don't subscribe to because here's my thing. And as we was talking about Crimea, like, I think what makes me, like, what I would consider myself a leftist is the form of democracy that we live under, which is a representative democracy. There is another form, pure democracy, that's called direct democracy, which you don't vote representatives. You vote. You pretty much vote
by the issue
on a referendum. You pretty much vote on the issue. You personally have the vote. You don't have a representative that you send to this chamber who then, is beholden to a whole different entity, which we know in a representative democracy, the government isn't beholden to the lower class voters, where they're beholden to who's ever put money in their pockets. If a politician is getting $10 million from their super PAC, and if you don't have $11 million in your pocket, they're not beholden to you. So
Right.
Which is exactly what I believe on like big ticket items like abortion should be, as a direct democracy. We're not at odds. We're not at odds here at all. Like
This didn't go at all how I thought it was going to go.
No, not at all. I mean, and I think our biggest point of contention is probably with kind of the Black Lives Matter and the statistics maybe behind that. But even then, I think we both agree that it is, like, you think it's pretty socioeconomic and race based, and I think it's a little bit of race based and more socioeconomic. I think it's weird that we could, and you brought up the cases of the white people that were killed by police too. I think it's weird that we make so much a deal, Antifa included, about police killings and completely ignore black on black crime, and it's like this like taboo we can't bring up for some stupid reason. Even though I do, but I'm trying to remember why some of the things that you and I got in fights with. I think it was over Breonna Taylor, if I can remember, because I interviewed the cop that got shot in the leg during that situation, that shooting. But I also feel like, have you changed at all in the last year?
No, I'm pretty standard, man. I mean, I've cooled down a little bit simply because, like we're like I said, we're in a little period of like the tensions aren't as high right now. I mean, they are like on social media, they are in the social sphere of everything going on. But as far as like on the ground activity and things like that, like we've had like a lot of, because I ain't gonna lie to you, from 2017, because I was in Charlottesville. I was one of the organizers in Charlottesville. Seeing that, witnessing that, experiencing that, then going, we had a little lull period in between 2017 and 2020 before the riots. It was another phase of just like, all right, regroup, go home, regroup. So I don't know. Shit could pop off tomorrow. Like it could be another flashpoint tomorrow that just strikes up, and it'll get active again, and we'll have to.
So you're like on the fucking Army Reserves for Antifa. Like
we're the reserve.
We're calling on you to make a difference.
So it's like, then the question is, I have two questions. I want to make sure they both get asked. One is, what is, when you reactivate, what is the point? What's the end game? What are you trying to do? But I do specifically want to talk about Charlottesville.
Yeah. I
mean, Trump said, that's a perfect example of what Cash was talking about in terms of the media misinformation, mismanagement, misinformation. Like, I'm assuming when you first saw Trump speaking and you saw the clips, you thought Trump was saying that there was good Nazis out there.
Well, I mean, I was in the crowd that the car came to. Honestly, I thought it was a dumpster, like, because I was kind of like in the back left part of the crowd. Like if you see where the car comes, like I was on the sidewalk, on the corner of the sidewalk, right where I couldn't see over. Like there was probably maybe, I'd say 25, 30 feet from where like the actual crash happened from where I was. And so I really couldn't see what it was, but it sounded like somebody had like taken a dumpster, rolled it down the hill and hit a car or something. I didn't know.
No. He's not asking that. He's saying that when you saw, when Trump said
good people on both sides.
Yeah, I went into, so when that happened, like there was a period from when the crash happened to we were going through, we were marching through the city pretty much, we were picking fights, like we were fighting. There was no, and the crazy thing about Charlottesville is there was no property damage except
what's even more crazy is it makes what Trump said even more true, because he said,
and the media, they're totally not fair. They're unfair. There were good people on both sides, people that were protesting on both sides, good people. In no way am I talking about the neo-Nazis, the KKK, or any racist organization. They need to be disavowed. They need to be disavowed.
He was talking about the protesters.
Hey, can I just give you kudos on that impression?
You hear him do Obama. He does Obama real good too.
I can only imagine. So the thing that there's a personal story. So there was a guy who was from Tennessee. He was from Murfreesboro. we had been at odds on the ground at a few actions leading up to Charlottesville. And I had seen him on the ground a few times. He was an older guy. He was actually in the law enforcement, former law enforcement. And he hit me. He would try to contact me kind of like, because I was always like that. Within Antifa, I was a media liaison, and I was a liaison for, speaking to, like, for example, I'll even get into it here in a little bit about Boogaloo. Like, I was actually a liaison talking to a lot of Boogaloo organizers and people within the Boogaloo movement. Yeah. I mean, but it's pretty deep. But so he contacted me when the day after Charlottesville, because the news was hit, like every news organization was hitting me up after Charlottesville. So I did a few interviews with a lot of international media outlets and stuff, even Japan and a lot of different all the local news stations. He hit me up after he had seen one of the interviews. And he was actually on his way, him and about, I think he had like a few carloads of people. They were on their way to Charlottesville, and they got a phone call from one of the scouts on their side that, hey man, there's some Nazi flags here. And the dude, and he told me, he said he laughed because he thought like, oh, they're trolling, is he saying like, oh, they call everybody Nazis, yeah. And he said, the scout said, no, like you're not listening to me. There's real deal Nazis here. Like this, like I'm not just saying these are just conservatives that the left's calling Nazis. These are legitimate Nazis here. And him and his caravan turned back around and went back to Tennessee and didn't go. So I think a lot of conservatives that did go there that didn't really know who they were going to be locking arms with or who they were going to be on the same side with. I think there's a lot of that. I think there is a huge gray area, but I think, it's just a lot of people found themselves in a very precarious, situation that, you're going into a Unite the Right rally, which, when you hear Unite the Right, it's like, yeah, I'm a right winger. I'm going to Unite the Right. But
really, you end up being with a bunch of alt-right fucking Klansmen.
Yeah, and then they get on the ground, and I would say a lot of conservatives hightailed it out. They didn't want to lose their job. They didn't want to be seen on video doing this because a lot of people did lose their job. A lot of people lost a lot of things that day. There was a lot of sad stories that came out of that. There was a guy, I don't know if you knew, he was marching around in the suit. He had a nice blue suit on. I don't know if it was blue or red, but it was very, like, I think it was an American suit, like an American flag suit. And he's walking around, and he was a very, outlandish character. He just was very out there. Well, he ended up killing himself, like, I think a year later, maybe not even a year later. So there was a lot of people, I think, that endured, like, a lot of things that day. Like, I even have PTSD and some anxiety and bits and depression that come from that, just from certain things. I don't have no triggers or anything like that. Like, I could watch all the footage again and not feel anything, but I think just there's something that I'm still reeling from witnessing a lot of the things that I witnessed, as far as the Tiki Torch March, as far as the car crash.
This don't do nothing to you?
Oh, I'm triggered.
There was an Antifa group. Who was the guy that he was Patriot something, Patriot Prayer, something like that. It was in Oregon, and quote unquote, tell me the true story, an Antifa guy shot him in the stomach.
You're talking about Jay Bishop, Aaron Danielson.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. From my understanding, because I have a lot of friends on the ground up there at Rose City, and there was a few conversations we had about what transpired.
Which guy is which?
Aaron Danielson. He's the guy that got shot. He's the Patriot Prayer guy.
Patriot Prayer. And Aaron Danielson is a friend of a woman that I'm friends with, Carmen. So
right.
That's how, and I just know their version of the story. So again, now.
So that day I was watching a lot of the live streams. So you had Tiny, Too Easy, and you had a lot of different Patriot Prayer folks that were, up there. It's in the PNW, man. It's a different animal than down here. Like down here, man, we go like it. Down here in the South, man, there was an escalation into armed protests, like Stone Mountain. Like I went to Stone Mountain, there was armed protests there. Like we started, so in the South, it's a lot different. But in the PNW, they were riding around. I know Patriot Prayer and a bunch of the Proud Boys were riding around up there with paintball guns. And they were riding around in the back of the trucks, like shooting at protesters. And and it was a very condensed, like where a lot of the melee and where a lot of the stuff was, where a lot of the conflicts was happening. And then it, you know, just like with anything else, with Charlottesville, with anywhere else, it just kind of spread out. It just kind of got so you had this one section where, you know, like you had Jay Bishop, him and another friend of his, and I don't know how many else was with him. I don't know if there was more than two of them. But they, you know, they were going and looking for, because Jay Bishop had his bear mace on him. So I mean, it was, and you know, when you get into mutual combat shit like that, you never know what can happen in a mutual combat situation, man. That shit can go downhill really quick. And so when you had, you know, Jay Bishop, you know, going around and you know, he was pretty much met with a couple of anti-fascists that were Michael Reinhold being the one. He pretty much, you know, found himself, you know, face to face with a conflict, and you know, it's just one of those. And I don't know if y'all remember it's kind of very, very similar to the Denver shooting where the
front of the Capitol building.
Yeah, and where you had that one guy, I think his name was like Lee Kelton, something like that. Yeah, he you know, he raised his bear mace, and it was kind of like a quick draw. It was like you got a gun on one end in one hand, and you got bear mace in the other. And the guy in Denver, you know, was found not guilty. I mean, he was charged, and they ended up dropping the charges after, you know, the footage came out that he, you know, it was instigated. It was, you know, it was pretty much he shot the bear. He shot him right in the face when the bear mace went off. It's kind of a similar situation when you look at the video of Aaron Danielson or Jay Bishop. That, you know, it was pretty much one of the bullets went through the bear mace in the Jay Bishop case. In the Aaron Danielson case, it was one of them quick draw things. It's like, you know, it's kind of the name of the game when you get into situations like that. Kind of like if I went to January 6th with all my Antifa gear on and I'm looking for a confrontation and I got a gun on me and I'm going to get pressed. You know what I mean? Like you go into situation. Yeah. We were all there.
What's your opinion on January 6th?
I was planning on going there. The execution was terrible. You know, it was, I will say the practice in theory was, I would, you know, any direct action against the government or the federal government, I co-sign. That's
you'd have been on the same side as the Patriot side.
Well, in theory, yeah, in theory.
He would have been wearing a red MAGA hat backwards with an orange stripe or an orange vest on, like the rest of Antifa that showed up there that day.
I mean, that, like, I'll say, like, we did have talks, like, where we were gonna go, we were gonna, like, and then we got talked out of it. We kind of just came to a consensus that, like, you know what, we're gonna sit this one out. We're gonna let, you know, whatever happened. And it was actually the only time that I remember that we refused to be on the ground.
Like you in particular in your group or all of Antifa?
No, like our group, just our network.
Okay, I'm about to say, there was a lot of Antifa there.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt that there were definitely, you know, people there exploiting the situation. I mean, because it was a situation that could be exploited.
Why didn't the Antifa get arrested?
I don't know. I personally don't know any anti-fascist that went. I'm not saying that there wasn't, because I mean, it just makes sense that, especially in, you know, with as big as this country is, you know, I'm sure there was some random group, a caravan of people from Wisconsin or Minnesota or somewhere. It's like, hey, we're going to go to January 6th. We're going to wear camo.
I shared the video.
Cash, no, I mean, we were both there, but Cash spent a lot of time looking at Discovery because he was in J6 jail for a long time. Corey, so we still didn't answer the question because Trump did that fantastic. Cash did that fantastic Trump impersonation. With Trump saying those words but being taken out of context, did that make your group like inflame? Like, were you guys super mad?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It was pretty much. I guess the reason is because, like, before, crazy thing is, like, I can't recall, maybe other people can. I can't recall the term both sides ever being used before that day. Like, I can't really think of a situation where the term, like, well, both sides are to blame.
Had good people.
Yeah, or good people on both sides. I can't recall a time before that where that was used. So it kind of felt like a gaslighting moment, because it was like it's an historic moment. It'll be something that does go down in history as
here's the cool part, though. Here's the cool part. Trump didn't demonize the people that were on the left that were protesting. He said on both sides, the counter protesters and the regular protesters, there were good people on both sides. And in no way he didn't call out Antifa. He didn't call out Antifa. He called out neo-Nazis. He called out Klan. He called out anybody that was white supremacists. He said, I'm not talking about any white supremacists or neo-Nazis or whatever he said. He said,
but he didn't say Antifa.
He did not say Antifa. He left Antifa out of it and just said on both sides there were good protesters. That wasn't these white supremacist fucktard assholes.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing. Like I try to differentiate, because I'll be honest with you, before Charlottesville, like the first action I went to was actually in Chicago. That was my first ever action on the ground. Before that, I would say I was a protester. Like, after that, I wouldn't put myself in that category of being a protester.
I gotta ask you something, Corey.
Yeah.
When you came to Chicago, was you one of the brothers that was in the black mask, or do you know of them brothers that was in the black mask that had on BLM shirts that started breaking shit and looting the stores during COVID that led to the ransacking of Michigan Avenue?
I don't recall that. No, I wouldn't know anybody in this. See, our affiliation in Chicago was ARA, which is Anti-Racist Action. They have a long standing history dating back to the 80s when ARA network actually originated.
AARP?
No, hell no. I don't think so. I doubt it. But they were in response to they were an anti-fascist, anti-racist collective that was in response to the rise of the skinhead movement in the 80s. So, and I don't know, a history lesson for anybody that doesn't know, the original skinheads were actually anti-racist. Like, it was actually an anti-racist.
Well, that went haywire.
What a fucking flip. Wow.
Well, what's crazy is that I don't know if y'all ever heard of SHARP, but Skinheads Against Racial Prejudice.
What?
Look it up. Yeah. So they actually called the Nazis who co-opted, because what Nazis started doing, which Nazis and fascists are very good at doing, is co-opting and rebranding. So it's something that they've done in Europe. They've done it here.
They did it during World War II.
They'll take the culture. They'll take the culture of, say, the punk scene of the skinhead movement, which was originally anti-racist. There was so many, fights and conflicts that would happen on at venues, at different music events and things like that. So what the skinheads would do was to blend in, they would wear the black bomber jackets, they would wear the Doc Martens, they would shave their heads, and then they would blend in with these skinheads. And then that is where the rebranding came from. So then the original skinhead movement, which were the anti-racists, they could no longer, since it became big that skinhead is affiliated with racism and Nazism, what they couldn't do was have that same persona. They couldn't have that. They couldn't have so they had to, so when you get into the subculture like that, like you'll find tidbit of information of things like that. But originally skinheads were anti-racist, which is why you still have some skinheads like movements like skinheads against
Black Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, and you even look at the Black Panthers. It's like the ideology is how I don't really look at party or as much as I do ideology. I feel like ideology is very more prevalent in people's minds as opposed to party. Because you got conservative Democrats, you got liberal Republicans. It's just
I'm trying to tell people that, and they don't listen to me when I say that.
Yeah, it's some hard for a lot of people that are very surface level when it comes to politics to understand. Like, well, a conservative is associated with Republican. Liberal is associated with Democrat. There is no gray area, but there's a huge gray area.
Which is right now, there is nothing liberal about being a Democrat, to be totally honest.
Right.
And I mean, there's not really much liberal about being a Republican either, but the Democrat Party has moved completely away from liberalism. So real quick, because I'm not getting the full answer on the Trump thing, because again, it sounded like you were mad about it, as you probably should have been by hearing it. Since you were there, that's why it's important.
Yeah.
How do you appropriated rage?
Yeah, I mean, we took it as like the very person that, you know, is symbolic to the reason that there was such a huge push for the Unite the Right rally. Is just like, you know, he gave voice. He kind of, you know, it was very very haphazardly how he you know, kind of disavowed the white supremacists. But however, you know, on the ground in Charlottesville, you had a lot of MAGA hats, you had a lot of Confederate flags, you had a lot of the ideology that I was referring to that were there. So it's like you had some people there that were under the banner or under the umbrella that Trump has kind of emboldened or encouraged, and it just kind of, you know, it
meshed together. It grouped everybody in.
But I'll say this, the thing is, like, we wasn't that outraged when we heard it, because first of all, you would have to be surprised and taken off guard. For us that have been doing the work that we've been doing, like hearing that from it, we actually expected worse. Like we actually expected, like, you know, round up every leftist that was there and give a medal to, you know, we wouldn't have been surprised even then. You know, it was just kind of one of them things where it was like, yeah, like it more generated more animosity and more conflict with the media, CNN, MSNBC, all the liberals, all the Democrats. Like they're the ones that kind of took hold of the both sides. Like, oh, he's saying that the Nazis are good. It's kind of like we wasn't really surprised. We kind of expected that. So when you get into that, you know, when you kind of get into that level of the subculture of the political realm of Antifa and being on the ground and doing things like that, things don't really, like, showing up to a rally and seeing a bunch of Nazi flags to the average person who's on the surface, that would send them like we just had a Nazi march down here in Nashville like 3 weeks ago, and everybody's posting it online like, oh my God, why are we allowing this? What is going on? Blah blah. And it's like you could tell people are very emotional because they're like, it's like they're surprised. But for people like us, it's like, well, I mean, why are you surprised? Like, it's just
kind of, I mean, answer the question. Like you know that it was probably a little bit of fallacy, a little bit of false rage, and at the same time, the reason you grouped it all in is because there was a lot of MAGA hats that just so happened to also. I mean, they were on the counter side as you, so that would probably make sense on why. Whatever, I get it. So then the question is, because you're talking about mutual combat, you're talking about, you know, how the bear mace and the bear spray and the shooting and the being prepared. And so when you're showing up for combat, you're not a soldier.
No.
What is
not in the governmental sense? No.
So what is the point? Because I mean, you guys portray the way that you organize. It sounds like is very soldier based. So what is the end game?
I think it's very militant based as opposed to soldier based. It's very because you know, it's very, like I was saying earlier about, I don't really put myself in the category of being a protester, because I'll be honest with you, like throughout history, like I couldn't imagine if let's say the Boston Tea Party, if they just held signs on the sidewalk and said, please don't tax us. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's like at some point you have to cross the line at some point. Like, and throughout history, we see where that's happened. We have anecdotal experiences and real life experiences where people are like, you know what, asking nicely and holding signs and standing on the sidewalk, obeying the laws and all that stuff only goes so far. Like,
so what's the end game? Sorry, Cash, before you do that, well, go ahead, Cash.
No, yep. I agree. I
mean,
I know that sounds crazy. I agree with that 100%. Like,
I don't disagree, but what is the end game though? Like, what are you guys? What is it? What is the plan? What is it? Like, what has Antifa done in the last 3 years that has improved anything?
I think Antifa over the last few years, because
10 years, whatever.
But yeah, I'd say I would say about 8 years is when Antifa finally made its way west. Like, I mean, the thing is, like, we took a lot of our style and playbook from a lot of the European anti-fascists that are far more active than we are, because they have a long history of being active. Like there isn't like they have decades and decades, if not generations, if not centuries of a culture of building a culture, building relationships and things like that. When Antifa made its way over here, the problem we faced was that a lot of liberals were co-opting Antifa, and kind of like they liked the appeal to it. They liked the, because, a lot of liberals that were radical liberals, like, like especially if you go back to the G20 summit, if you go back to the WTO in Seattle back in '99, and you go to the G20 in 2011, 2012, you had a lot of liberals who liked the appeal of anti-fascism. They didn't like the tactics. They didn't like, so you had a lot of people that bastardized anti-fascism over here, which is, we had to deal with that even while we were the most active in building our relationships. We were also at the same time simultaneously having to weed out the radical liberals. And
so our frustration is probably with the Antifa group that is not part of you. So then what is you have more of a classical view of anti-fascism. So what does America, like Jamie's question asked it right, as I say, what is the end game?
Mm-hmm.
Her comment was, what does America look like in your world? So
I would say, especially the difference between anti-fascists and your average classical liberal, not the neoliberals of the West today. The big difference between anti-fascists and the classical liberals are that, again, it goes back to the reformist ideology, is that we see a more direct approach to dismantling the system as it exists now, as opposed to partaking in the system or protesting the system and kind of trying to reform it from the inside.
How do you dismantle the system then?
I hope I can go on. I hope I can go on the record and on here and say without, getting a knock on the door. But you have to go at the structure. You have to go at the root. It has to be strategic. It can't, which
like
is
a real insurrection.
Right. Well, yeah. So like not breaking Starbucks windows, not breaking Starbucks windows, not engaging in stupid.
So why is that what the predominance of Antifa does? Is that because that is not part of the true Antifa? Even though, like, you got to realize that's what Antifa is labeled as, the people that go around cities and bust shit.
Well, this is another thing. The optics of it all, the optics that we've had to deal with, is the fact that you also have two things happening at once. You have a lot of disenfranchised youth that are in these communities, that are generationally, deprived, economically deprived, that are feeling. And this goes, like I said, it's not just urban communities, it's rural communities as well. But you have the optics of your network, or Antifa, the name Antifa, being associated with every bit of property damage that happens with people who are apolitical, don't give a shit about politics, couldn't even tell you what Antifa was, but they were engaging in kind of like just the mass chaos and the mass riots that were happening, which you would consider opportunists. That kind of just like, I couldn't even tell you who the president is right now, but I'm going to go out here with all these people and start fucking shit up.
And they're well funded as well.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't get no funds.
You're not funding. I'm learning that right now, real quick, Cash. Your group of Antifa, I'm going to be under the impression you don't get any funding. The group of Antifa that we believe is Antifa, they have massive funding, and they're the ones that are tearing up shit around cities and doing all this stuff, which leads to the question, like, if you're a true blue anti-fascist and part of that organization, you have to realize that you have been completely bogarted by a group that doesn't represent you. And that's actually what represents Antifa in this country. That is actually what we believe Antifa is. And until you guys call them out and make it very clear that's not you, then you're kind of grouped in with them. Just the same as if I don't call out racists, I might as well be them.
And to piggyback on that, it's the same exact thing. What's happening to you has happened to the MAGA movement by the retarded, racist, white supremacist, them people that claim to be MAGA. they don't represent us the same way that them people that are called out to do the things that obviously that you haven't done are making a bad name for you. And my second question, first question will be, does your group go around beating up elderly people that wear red hats? And my second question is, who is your uncle? I know your aunt's name is Tifa, but what is your uncle's name?
My uncle, Soros.
Whoa!
That was good.
There
I can't believe he picked up the joke. I'm like, he's not going to get it. He got it. That was pretty good.
Hold on, I got the joke. I just said that. That's the first thing that came to my mind.
And
that was good.
Tifa. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. Anyways.
But no, I mean, but so even to use January 6th as an example, you had people there. You were kind of at a crossroads when you're there. You're in front of Trump. You're listening to him speak. You feel like you've been wronged. You feel like there's something astronomically just like very corrupt happening in front of your face. And regardless of the motives, regardless of whether it's right or wrong, the morality of it all, you're at a crossroads where it's like, well, do we just sit here, listen to him talk and go home? Or do we storm that shit? Like, and so you have a lot of people that, and there's a lot of conservatives. You'll see, well, they weren't a part of us. Like they wasn't with us, blah, blah, blah. But it's like,
Cash will speak to the fact that they were. There was definitely some ultra right wingers that are there.
And like I said,
right wing Antifa.
Take the motives out of it. It's just like you had I mean, you're already there. You've got the numbers. You've got the willpower. You have what's the term? You have the momentum. Yeah, you have the momentum. You have the inspiration, and you're there. It's like, you're not going to get that again. It's going to be hard to get that many people together.
And none of us had that. Like there's a handful of people. What's that?
I said it's not going to be hard. I'm just kidding, FBI. I'm just joking.
Knock.
But literally, you see people say that. That's what people, my friends, be like, you guys were trying to storm the Capitol. None of us were trying. Nobody was trying to storm the Capitol.
I was trying to occupy the Capitol.
We weren't even. I don't think that was anybody's initial plan to occupy the Capitol, except when
they just sit in.
But see, that goes to my point is, you could be there, and it might not be like, just like with Antifa in this metaphor. You're there, and things will happen. Things will happen that are outside of your power, and it's like you just have to take what comes with it. Like and that's kind of like what we've had to do. Like, but I mean, we've done our best to try to control the optics. It's very hard because not many people within our spaces are willing to speak publicly or willing to do what I'm doing, pretty much. The fear. I mean,
I'll tell you, no, it's not that. I'll tell you why. See, this is what I get from you. You don't seem like the person that was there to try to incite any violence when you're out doing what you're doing. You don't seem like the type of person who was there to go and fight anybody or to break anything or to steal something or loot a store. That's not what you seem like. But the people that don't want to get on here and talk are the people that were there for that. Them are the people that have something to hide. Okay, yeah, we went out there and we fucked up that Trump supporter, that old man wearing the red hat. Yeah, we were there and we broke windows. Yeah, we were there and we turned cop cars over and set shit on fire. And they don't want to talk about it because they were there to do wrong. You don't go there with any malicious intent, which is why I say you're separate from them, bro. I know you identify with them, but you're different.
Are you familiar with the AutoZone dude that blew up the AutoZone in Minnesota?
Nuh-uh.
So it came out that he was actually a white supremacist that wore all black, which, anybody could wear all black. Right. Or like the battle. I don't know if you've seen the movie Battle in Seattle, which was pretty much the whole. I mean, it's got Channing Tatum in it. It's got a lot of good actors in it. You should watch it. It's a very historically accurate depiction of what happened. But pretty much what you have, and even in Charlottesville, I experienced it. We had you had people who were getting dropped off like by cars or by whatever, and they would be like wearing motorcycle helmets. They would be just completely blacked out, and you could tell, like, because usually, like, especially when you get on the ground and you have like the structure that we had or at times do have, Sometimes it's very structured, sometimes it's not as structured, but we can always pretty much tell. We have identifiers that it's like, all right, they're with us. We know that person's with us. Whether it, like how you were saying about orange tape, right? Yeah, you have identifiers, and but there's another entity that also has identifiers, which is law enforcement, which is police, because it's like you don't want a friendly fire situation where if your whole goal, just like in Seattle, just like in Charlottesville that I experienced, you have law enforcement or bad actors, even if they're not law enforcement. They could be paid by law enforcement. They could be paid by another entity to do whatever nefarious stuff that they're wanting to do. What they'll do is, they'll have identifiers, like whether it be on their shoes, it'll be something very small. And I was typically one of the people that could point it out really quick. Like as soon as I seen a G-Shock and some military boots, all right, that probably ain't one of us. But it was kind of just like, we in my instance, there was a guy that got out of the car. This was all before the crash. We were all like kind of like regrouping after the initial conflicts and stuff. And there was a guy that came up to our group by himself, blacked out, couldn't see anything on him. He had all kinds of stuff on him, like all kinds of different like batons and just different stuff on him. And he comes up to our group, which is something we know is very out of the ordinary. Comes up to our group and said, "Hey, can I get in with you guys?" And it was just kind of like, you better get the fuck away. Like, we don't know who the fuck you are. Like, you're not vouched. And that was another thing within our networks and what kept us kind of, together with our different affinity groups is that we knew who was who. We had a vouch system. We knew who was with us, who wasn't with us. And when there was somebody that came over, even if that person wasn't a bad actor, even if we couldn't determine that person was going to do anything nefarious or to tear up our optics or whatever their goal was,
you wouldn't let him in.
It was still a liability.
Do you know who Taylor Hanson is?
Sounds familiar.
He's the guy that was the one that filmed the dancing fireman. He tried to infiltrate Antifa, I think either in Seattle or whatever. He's Texas based, and he goes to a lot of those protests to just kind of get coverage and whatever it was. But he got the shit beat out of him by a group of Antifa once they found out that he was kind of undercover reporting what he was doing there. So I get you guys definitely have a suspicion of outsiders. I understand that. 100%.
Well, then there's the case of Andy No. Andy No knows me pretty well.
Oh yeah, Andy No.
Yeah, he kind of had the same situation happen with him, but he actually was, on the opposing side and trying to kind of work. He was seen organizing and things with Proud Boys and stuff, and he would try to mingle around and try to get pictures identified, like our faces and things like that. And they threw a milkshake at him, and it turned into it was concrete in the milkshake. Like it was. So
you know what's crazy? You know what's nuts, bro? Is that we're anti-fascist.
We're
conservatives. We're anti-fascist. We don't like fascism.
Right. The problem is, it seems as though groups outside of Corey's group don't understand what fascism is.
Right. Well, so here's another thing, and it's documented. It's a long read. I'll share the link with y'all. But we put out a communique. I want to say it was right after Charlottesville. It was 2017. We actually had an infiltrator in our group. I'm not gonna say no names, but they're all pretty much public. But I'll send the link with y'all. It's quite a long read. So, but we pretty much, just to sum it up, we had an infiltrator when I first got into the chapter that I was in. There was somebody there that that looked a little out of place. Didn't look like somebody that was from the culture or the subculture of anti-fascism, the punk scene, just the scene in general. It looked like a very upkept person. Well, come to find out, this person was a professor. This person was somebody that had status, and we still to this day feel like they were under an alias. So this person was in our groups. Me and a couple of our other couple of my other comrades, we ended up actually leaving this very group, which was the original Nashville Antifa, and we joined the ARA network. And so we started Nashville ARA, and it was just a few of us. But in the original Nashville Antifa group, It was actually right before Charlottesville. I thought it was after, but it was right before Charlottesville. Like I'm talking about the weeks leading up to Charlottesville. We had an inkling that there was something up, and so there was a lot of communication going on with other groups within our network and that were loosely affiliated with our network that also were in touch with this same person. We'll come to find out this very person who was a professor also had a twin that looked exactly like them that was also up in the Michigan area who was kind of doing the same thing. We'll come to find out that they were both working together and were sending messages to different groups through social media saying, do you need body armor? Do you need this? Do you need
Trying
that?
to set y'all asses up.
So we put out a communique, and a lot of different networks signed on to it to kind of let everybody know, like, dude, like these are black jacketed, like they're black jacketed. You don't work with these people unless you want to do like some serious time. Like they are out to pretty much do something nefarious. And so we didn't know if they were. I mean, there was opinions that they were Democratic operatives. There was opinions that they were law enforcement. There was so many different opinions floating around, but we didn't care to find out. We just wanted to alleviate ourselves from that. So we all put out a communique. And so we internally during that time were on top of, because during that same time period, actually the very night I was on the way to Pikeville, Kentucky. I don't know if y'all ever heard of Matthew Heimbach and the Traditionalist Workers Party. We were on the way up. We were on the way up to Pikeville, Kentucky. And I get 30 minutes outside of Pikeville. It was about midnight. And I get a phone call from my girlfriend at the time. And she says, I think it sounded like a gunshot outside the house, like a very loud gunshot, like somebody shot a shotgun at the house. Well, I told her, I said, don't call the police. I'm on the way back. Don't call the police, whatever you do. Well, the neighbor two houses down was outside smoking a cigarette. They seen someone pull up to my mailbox and put something in the mailbox. They sped away and it exploded. And this was like a week before Charlottesville. And this was during the whole time period that the infiltration was happening, that the split was happening, that we were in this whole, like trying to keep our eyes out, like for everything going on, while also organizing and getting on the ground with because like I said, like to answer your question earlier, we were not of the anti-fascist groups that were going out like aimlessly beating up old people or doing things against people that weren't willing participants or anything like that. Like if there was a Nazi rally, if there was a neo-Confederate rally, if there was anything like that, we showed up to that. Like whether it be
that all day.
And you even communicated with Boogaloo too. Like you guys were not. You guys were. I mean, and there's some dangerous guys in Boogaloo. I know a little bit about Boogaloo. And you guys were cool with the Boogaloo boys.
I was a liaison pretty much. And this is what got a lot of people to distrust me, and probably still distrust me to this day, is that I was. And I'm not comparing myself, just the tactic, but Fred Hampton and his Rainbow Coalition was like, we can't be puritists. We need to reach out to the, the different coalitions, because what I viewed the Boogaloo, even when the Boogaloo came on, like there was a lot of people like, oh, they're right wingers. Like everybody that came on the scene, like everybody just like, oh, they're right wingers. And I was like, well, hold on. They're Boogaloos. They have this niche. They wear Hawaiian shirts. They have this get up. They don't really. So it felt to me like the Boogaloo was politically homeless libertarians that were, didn't want to affiliate themselves with, Confederates or white supremacists and things like that. So they had their own, and they had brawls. Like I was there in Columbus, Ohio, and they had brawls with Proud Boys there. Like they worked alongside a lot of our within our networks and stuff. So when I was talking to like a lot of people within the Boogaloo, there was more intersectionality with a lot of people within the Boogaloo, which is what I tried to tap into, which was distrust for the government, a lot of different things that we kind of coalesced on, and it worked for the most part. But the Boogaloo didn't really understand the OPSEC the operational security that it requires to not get, swiped up by the feds or law enforcement. So I mean, they were just letting anybody in. They were just like not caring, which is why you don't like Boogaloo was very short lived.
I picture you guys like stepbrothers. When they're like, what's your favorite dinosaur? Velociraptor? Do you hate white supremacists? I hate white supremacists. What's your favorite white supremacist group to hate? Neo-Nazis. Did we just become best friends?
Yeah. I mean,
I just have a couple more questions, like literally just two. I was going to ask about how you felt about Kyle Rittenhouse, but I don't know if that's important.
Nah.
Why? So say somebody like Tony Timpa.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that, to me, from the outside, the selective outrage based on even your faction of Antifa is strictly race-based? Wouldn't Tony Timpa have been a case where you guys would protest as well, but I don't think you guys did?
Yeah, it was, it's hard to respond to, because what I realized when you're below the surface and you're deep into it, you're more your attention goes strictly to just about every incident that's occurring. So Tony Timpa didn't get media attention. Therefore, the people that are surface level that just paid attention to the media wouldn't have heard of Tony Timpa. But when you were, deep into it, like we were, and are, like there are people within our, like there were actions in regards to Tony Timpa. It's just they didn't get any coverage. They didn't get any, no media really cared because it didn't fit the narrative of, to get it wouldn't have got clicks, it wouldn't have got views. Same with Daniel Shaver. And, and it was very, eye-opening to see that the further you got into the political culture of anti-racist activism, you start seeing more of the broad things that were happening that didn't get a lot of media attention, because there was a lot of Tony Timpas, like more Tony Timpas than there were George Floyd's. Yeah, like and but again, it didn't fit the narrative. It didn't get clicks. It didn't generate the conflict. It didn't fit the narrative. So
you guys didn't know about it when it just happened. I guess that was part of it.
We did personally. We knew about it. Because we, like I said, like we kept up with every little incident that happened, whether it was a white person.
So why weren't you activating on those and only on the more virtue signaling side?
Well, Tony Timpa happened in 2016,
right?
So we weren't really. I would say, Antifa wasn't really. That's why there was so many small actions with Tony Timpa, because it was mainly localized. It was mainly, the people of that community that were like, hey, cops killed this man unjustly. And you would have very few people, like you had like Roland Martin who would bring it up, or you would have very few people that would actually draw attention to that incident itself. And, then you just had to wait for, the media to pick up on a Tamir Rice or on a George Floyd. And those are the things that got clicks. Those are the things that generated the most outrage. But our outrage stayed the same. Like it never.
So I got it. I understand this completely. Your faction of Antifa is really conservatives that don't know they are, and all the rest of them are just fucked up.
Well, I mean, I would say this. I would say when you look at the history of Antifa in Europe, like it was mainly working class, lower class people responding and reacting to. Which was mainly white folks, like Antifa. That's when you look at Antifa. Why you look at Antifa now, and it is mainly, a large collection of white folks. You do have, a little sprinkled in of other ethnicities and stuff like that. But when you look at the Antifa in Europe, it was mainly like, working class, lower class people that, and if you even come over here to the, like, let's say, for example, the Haymarket affair in 1886 in Chicago, mainly your unions, humans have a way of responding to exploitation, and it's typically it derives into violence and response to things. So I mean, and I think that's where conservatives are kind of like of the same, same school of thought is, if we are under tyranny, if we're directly attacked, like we band together and we, do what needs to be done. And, but you're going up against an American government, the stronger it gets, it's harder to do.
Un-American government. An un-American government.
Un-American government. It's just like you have they keep us divided through the cultural issues. And one thing that we all, especially conservatives and lower class, rural areas and lower class, folks in urban areas, there is that intersectionality of, anti-government, economic depravity and that common enemy. And the only way you can keep those two groups from colliding and building is through what you see the government doing now. And the CIA is extremely good at keeping things divided and keeping
their job. That's literally the CIA's job. Okay, so the one thing people keep asking in the comments, and I'm curious. I mean, I'd be curious on a lot of topics like Israel and all that stuff, but let's like something that's more American based. And would you consider yourself somebody that loves America or no?
It's weird to love a piece of land or a nation. It's just kind of like there's too many things that come with it, like the government. Because when people say like you love America,
are you proud to be an American?
I reserve my pride for things that I've achieved. I don't think I achieved anything from being born where I'm born. If I was born in Indonesia, if I was born somewhere in the world, like, would I be proud? Like, it's kind of like I just pride should be reserved for achievements and accolades and
I think so. That's where we do disagree. I think America has a lot of great aspects. So I get where I actually totally understand where you're coming from. I'm still proud to be an American because I do think the good far outweighs the bad. But that was my question. The reason I asked that was kind of leaning into protecting the borders. What is your opinion on what's happening at the southern border?
Well, I mean, this is a very nuanced, very intimate topic because somebody with my philosophy, I believe, borders are pretty much imaginary and upheld through force. So if we were to go back to the old days, Texas would go back to Mexico. Like, it's just, but again, you had the Battle of the Alamo, you had, the different military events that took place that kind of that a lot of reclamation, all these things. So it's just like, and when you got a border, you have so much turmoil within the world that, it's kind of like if my house right now was in turmoil and burning down and I had to survive or I had to protect my family, I would go next door no matter what that next door was. As long as it had a roof, I don't care if there was crazy corruption. I don't care if there was a bunch of evil shit going on. I just know that my house, I can't be in it. I got to go next door.
But they're not even going next door. The bulk of people coming through the southern border aren't even Mexican anymore. They're South American, they're Haitian, they're Honduran. I mean, they're from everywhere. So
right.
So we do. I don't know how. So the way that you're phrasing it, you're a little bit changing the concept. Borders are imaginary, but if there's people's houses burning down, do you think there's a point where we have to protect our own home?
Well, yeah, I think, I mean, just logically or logistically speaking, you have to somehow create an order of what's going on. I think where we have messed up as far as the border goes is that 3% of green card recipients, like only out of 100% of the people who are of the applicants, only 3% get approved. And same with asylum. Like we deny 97% more than we approve. And and I think that is what creates the backlog. It's like, it's kind of like if you had, if you had a health condition and you had to go to the hospital and the hospital had, a backlog, like, and only 3% of people were getting approved, you're going to get more desperate. You're going to get, you're going you're going to do things that are, you know, detrimental to your life, detrimental to, you know,
we agree that we have a broken immigration system. I agree with that part, but I still think what's happening at the border is not just a byproduct of that. Go ahead.
I gotta chime in on it. So here's the thing. In a perfect world, if I was created perfect world, we wouldn't have any borders, and because people wouldn't break the law and everybody would have everything that they need, right? But we live in a world that has become we have civilization. The way civilization is set up in today's world is we have nations, we have people in different nations that don't like our nation. And we have people in different nations that have diseases that our nation has already gotten past. We have people within different nations that do not agree with the way that we live or acknowledge the great things that we have to the point where they would take care of it or try to contribute to the way that our civilization runs. All right. So when it comes to the concept of a border, I understand why it's necessary, even though if I had it my way, I wouldn't have it, right? Because I would be running the world and it would go the way that I want, but that's not our perfect world. That's not how we live. The way that we live is we have to have a border. All nations around the world that are great nations, they have borders. And it's not to keep people out that, you know, want a better life. This is why we have an immigration policy, even though it is flawed. It is a bit flawed. But when you allow just anybody to come in, you could potentially allow disease. You could potentially allow terrorists, the people that want to destroy what you've built.
We're at like literally a fever pitch of, even according to our own government right now, in terms of terror threat in this country. Like we're at a very high level right now based on their intel.
I think historically, I think where, you know, I think it's kind of like you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Is we've already established America as a nation that is open to immigration, which is the hurdled masses yearning to be free. All the I think because a lot of people in these countries, in these ravaged countries, they don't keep up with Biden. They don't keep up with American politics.
They're keeping up with fucking Biden. They showing up with signs talking about "Thank you, Biden." Biden said we can be here.
Right.
I disagree with that. I think that is all, like, when countries can't have their own politics, they pay attention to the U.S. politics. Like that's what the world knows. The world knows more about U.S. politics than some places know about their own.
Well, I think a lot of that problem also derives historically from America's, you know, interventionist policies of going into different countries, bombing them, you know, waging war, sending coups, overthrowing, you know, installing puppet dictators, and you know, and that's a long history. CIA operation, Bay of Pigs in Cuba, the Gulf of Tonkin in Vietnam. There's just so many different things that we show our face, our ugly face to the world, which is, you know, a lot of the world likes our culture when it comes, you know, everybody knows Mike Tyson. Everybody knows like a lot of like different things that go on in American culture because it's very prevalent. It's very like a lot.
I know Cash is thinking about doing a Mike Tyson impression. I saw it in his face. He said Mike Tyson and his eyes got all big.
I was just about to do it.
I mean, it's just I hope he beats Jake Paul, by the way. I really do.
Agreed. I hope he knocks him the fuck out.
Yeah, I hope so. But I mean, I think, you know, with the American interventionist policy, man, I think it has generated a lot of disdain for this country because we haven't learned to stay out of other countries' affairs, and it's just like kind of like if I wanted to be the world police or the community police and go fix every issue, everybody's gonna know who I am. Like and you might have people that are like, hey, he's doing the right thing, he's doing a good thing. But I think a vast majority of people is like, maybe he should stay out of everybody else's fucking business and let us deal with our shit. And I think there are interests, American interests, that are throughout the world that this government pretty much tries to, you know, whether it be NATO, whether it be, you know, the IMF, you know, the International Monetary Fund, you know, the different things that I feel like America has a lot of interest in these countries, and we play to the idea that we're liberating these countries, we're giving them freedom, we're giving them a taste of the American way of life. But I think in reality, I think a lot of people that are below the surface know that that's a bunch of hogwash. I think a lot of people, even on the conservative side, realized that, because the day after 9/11, massive people going to the recruitment centers, massive people going into the Middle East. Like, hold on, we're going to Iraq. I thought Osama bin Laden was in Afghanistan. Why are you sending
so many military that are so pissed off that and they're huge patriots. They love our country, and they're like, I was fucking lied to.
I think that generates a lot of disdain, even on the conservative side of like,
absolutely.
you sent my men, you sent my brother, you sent my father, you sent my cousin over to become cannon fodder for your special interests.
For bullshit WMDs.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of the disdain for the, and again, I know a lot of people on the right will differentiate. There's America, and then there's the American government or the un-American government, as you said. And I just think that a lot of people, especially that have been the victims of such, American intervention and losing family members, losing limbs, and getting medals for going over and blowing
their bullshit agenda.
And who helped a lot of that is the WikiLeaks. When the WikiLeaks were coming out and people were saying like that was huge, like because now you're getting firsthand looks, kind of like, I know we probably ain't gonna get into Palestine and Israel or anything like that, but
maybe another time.
Yeah, you're definitely welcome back.
We should have him come on Truth.
I would love for you to come on and like maybe do a show with us, bro. Like consistently. You're a well of knowledge.
Anytime, man. Anytime.
And we disagree on just enough to make it interesting. I'm gonna pretty much wrap it up in a second. Cash, you can have a final question. I'm gonna answer this for you. Tanya said, "Should we be funding Ukraine?" I'm gonna assume you'd say no. Yeah, okay.
No.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I could have guessed that one. So real quick, guys. Tomorrow night, we've got obviously our Truth Will Set You Free Tuesday show. We've got a couple fun topics on that. I've had some stuff scrolling on the bottom. If you want all the different things we do, I'm not going to do the long reads or anything like that. But tomorrow night we have a Zoom after our 7 o'clock, 1 hour, 7 o'clock Eastern show. So we've got it at 7:30 Central, 8:30. We've got our Freedom Box. So if you're interested, just fill this out. Just go to freedombox.com. I'm sorry, freedomboxinfo.com. Fill that out, put interested in the chat. We'll find that. The other banner that I've had up, clearly, if you always like our gear, where is that?
Go get the gear, you guys. Go check out awakenotwokestore.com. Enter Truth for 20% off of everything else in the store except stuff with my face on it.
That's
cash for cash.
Let's see. 15-year shelf life, high quality ground beef, griddownchowdown.com. Use Truth to check out for 15% off. And then lastly, the water that Cash always pretends to drink, Century H2O. Use Russo 10 for 10% out at 10% off at checkout. These are things that go under the sink. You only need to change the filter once every 18 to 24 months, and it is better water than anything you could ever get at Brita. I think Corey's drinking a margarita right now. All right.
Good. Water's so clear that you can't even see it.
Good guess.
It is a margarita, right?
It is.
Man, that's got to be a warm ass margarita. All right.
I want to just before we wrap up, one thing.
We're not we each get one more question.
Oh, I don't have a question. I have a statement.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to clear something up. The reason why we went into Iraq instead of Afghanistan first, Dave Chappelle already showed it with Black Bush. Nigga tried to kill my father.
Man, that's classic Dave Chappelle, man. Nothing beats that.
All right, my last question to you, just based on how you feel about politics, and I know Trump is imperfect, and I think Cash is probably more of a Trump fan than I am. I am a Trump voter. I was a Trump fan at one point. I still like him in a lot of ways. I've got issues with him and the how much he loves the vaccine, apparently, some stuff. I don't love the way that he talks all the time, but as a whole, based on your belief system, he's as close to a politician as you've ever had that would fit your actual ideals and ideology. So why do you dislike Trump? That's my last question.
I think it's more of like who he speaks to, because again, like
is that his fault?
I know, but as far as like what I went through, like and where I'm from, I feel like if I was born anywhere else or if I grew up anywhere else, I'd probably be a proud boy. Like if I had the same mentality that I have being active, if I had any other environment, if I was geographically, like if the situations were different, if I was accepted at the Christian institutions I went to, if I didn't have the experiences that I did, my outlook would probably be different. It's molded. A lot of my experience is molded, what I believe. But I feel like for me to support Trump, if his base wasn't, and when I say base, I like, because there again, you have a condensed base, and then you have like people like you who I wouldn't put in the Charlottesville Nazi category. So there's a lot of you have a lot of gray areas, and it's just, when I'm around the people that especially when I got on social media and looked at a lot of the people that were teaching me the racist jokes growing up, that were teaching me a lot of the hateful things that I was exposed to growing up, and seeing them support him, it just drove me further away. And it's just, if it was different, like if he was speaking, to a different audience, if there wasn't like a cult of personality around him, I think it would be a lot easier. However, it's just the people that I had so much resentment and disdain for tend to be the ones that are wearing his pajamas to to bed.
I feel that.
I
understand that. I get it.
And same with Joe Biden. I was like, same with Joe Biden. Like I'll be honest with you, I don't go out into public even during election time and see just Biden hats everywhere and people just making it their personality and things like that. Like, I don't personally see it. I'm not in those circles though, but I do know it exists. I'm not gonna say it doesn't exist, but I have disdain for those people as well. So it's just that's where the politically homeless.
So this is actually not accurate. Trump is
not accurate at all. Trump is actually pro-choice depending on the situation, and he supports gay marriage.
Yeah, so this is wrong. Yeah. Except, he does. He talks about God, which again, he's been a Democrat his whole life. I really do think he's somebody that speaks to a lot of what you're saying. And you, as a true free thinker, from what I've taken from these 2 hours and 45 minutes. Yeah. Yes, there are some shitty people that like him, but based on ideology, it's you got to.
You're right there on. You're just like me, bro. I feel like
distance yourself.
You're the yin to my yang.
Yeah, it's just, I think, because paying attention to Trump before, and you can see it all, like it's all on YouTube and everything. You could see his past statements on, being a lifelong Democrat from New York City. He was what we would call, if before he walked down that escalator in 2016, or 2015, what we would call him is a neoliberal elitist, from a coastal elitist from New York City, who is also a billionaire, who is completely out of touch with that. But I think as a businessman, just as any person that runs a business, you got to know what to say, who to say it to, and how to say it. And I think he saw there was so much resentment, especially going from the Tea Party movement and the Sarah Palin, Mitt Romney, John McCain era of conservatism. He realized that, just as us on the left see that there is no political home for us, as far as Joe Biden, as far as Nancy Pelosi, even AOC, even Bernie, even all these people.
Talk bad about AOC.
But there's nowhere we can really run to until there is a demagogue, or until there is a voice that says the things that we want said. And I think Trump knew what to say, who to say it to, and because let's be real, like Mitt Romney, the days of Mitt Romney are over with.
I still would have voted to this day for Obama, as much as I disdain Obama. It'd be real hard for me to vote Mitt Romney. He's terrible, absolutely terrible.
Right. But get on this microphone and do my thing.
But you saw the Tea Party movement, which and goes back to the Bundy. When I was talking about the Bundy ranch, you had a lot of Tea Party movement people that started getting very politically active and started partaking in politics and getting into government and things like that, which we don't have that on the left. We don't have really much far leftist, anti-fascist that are willing to just, say things that are politically incorrect.
Our far left is fascist. That's the problem. The far left, politically in this country, have become more of the fascist side, whereas the anti-fascist side, I don't think, based on what I'm hearing, you don't have a home, period, anywhere at this point. Right. Like, you don't have a party to latch onto. You don't have anybody representing you except for yourselves. But again, like with Trump, this is a guy that, although for some odd reason the racist David Dukes of the world followed him, this is a guy that since the 80s, he was employing black people. He was giving equal pay to women and African Americans. Like he was at, because you said he knew what to say.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I think he actually didn't know it. He would say some stupid shit that would come off the cuff that sounded dumb. But from an action standpoint, this is a guy that did prison reform, did crime reform, did things like that.
Trump got me home.
That's how Cash. I mean, that's part of the reason Cash got some of his stuff reduced. And then you've also got the fact that with the historic black colleges, like he did things. He actually did things for the black people.
Mm-hmm. And
I think that I do think it's very odd that and you're right, the racist right does tend to say MAGA, but that's not him. I always said, like, you can't blame David Duke supporting Trump. I mean, if you're getting religious, that's how the devil bogarts something that could be good. And I'm not saying Trump is like in a godly position. I don't want to judge that. I don't know enough.
He's selling Bibles, nigga.
that's the co-opt of
right.
It all, though, is like, you have conservatives that pretty much how a lot of people view Antifa. We have to answer for all the worst elements within our group, which I feel like, I don't think the right is immune to that. I feel like, it's kind of like you have to wear it, even though you have to wear the shit stain, even though you don't want to wear the shit stain.
But he denounces them. We denounce him. Like I
gotta chime in.
Why? Because you're black?
Yes. You already know. But no, this is the thing that I like about Trump. All right. Versus Obama, Biden. We'll just use Biden and Trump because that's the rematch. We're gonna knock him down. But with Trump, he didn't make it a priority to go out of his way to pander to nobody. He did things for all Americans, and he made it about all Americans. When he did the unemployment and brought unemployment down to the lowest rates it's ever been, he did that for all Americans. Black, brown, yellow, red, white, didn't matter. All Americans benefited from it. The funding the historic black colleges and universities, he did that because it was an American thing to do. All these other schools get funding, and these people got to come back year after year to get funding. No, he did the right thing, and he made it for the next 10 years. You ain't got to come back and do nothing. Right. He created opportunity zones for all people in rundown communities. It wasn't people always equating. Joe Biden's the reason for this, especially when he was running, of making people equate poor communities with being black. That's not what it is. You're from a community like mine, I'm assuming, just by the way that you talk. You know what I'm saying? Right. And he did that for all communities. Right. He did everything that he did for American people. He put Americans first. This is the reason why he got my support still to this day, because he's still on America first. Not to say that he probably didn't have no shady shit that he did to make his get bankroll get a little bit bigger through his family or whatever, because everybody benefits. It's just the thing. But he didn't put anybody else out. He made sure that bottom Americans, low class Americans, could try to get up to middle class and even go up to high class, to the highest class if they wanted to. You know what I'm saying? Right. And that's why I fuck with Trump. Right. That's why I fuck with Trump. He says what he says, and he says it, but his policy, it can't be refuted. His policy was the best policy that we've seen since fucking forever. You know what I'm saying? If blacks was enslaved right now, he'd have freed them. That's how cold he is. You know what I'm saying?
No, I didn't want to divert from what you said. Made good points. Do you recall the Dixie Chicks? What got them completely?
Yeah,
like the
chicks,
yeah,
the racist.
Yeah. Do you remember what got them completely banned off the air and had everybody burning all of their?
Didn't they say some shit about Bush or something like that?
They were overseas, and they said that they were ashamed that George Bush was from Texas because that's where they're from. And that's all they said. So I think another bit of my disdain and why it's hard to get on that Trump train is the double standards that exist within, like, when cancel culture comes. Like, nobody said the word cancel culture when it was Colin Kaepernick. Nobody said the word cancel culture when it was Dixie Chicks. Nobody, because it was pretty much like if you're somebody who gets on any mainstream level, and you start criticizing the police, you get what we would deem canceled. You know, like if I got on and said a lot of my beliefs as far as military intervention, or even if I stated my positions on Palestine and Israel publicly, like I get, even in left spaces, even in Democrat spaces, I get what people would call canceled. So when I got to see for years a lot of people doing a lot of the things that they claim that we do, it just generated more disdain, because it's like we don't have, and I think that's the luxury that the right has, is they have somebody who has a megaphone and a podium and a pulpit to say the things that the people on the right, the Tea Party, the remnants of the Tea Party want said. We don't really have that, and the only way we have that is through culture, through different means of like, whether it's music, whether it's different ways of reaching, you know, who we can reach. We don't have that demagogue. We don't have that person in the pulpit saying what we want said. So when I saw a lot of the things that were being attributed to us as far as cancel culture, what happened to the Dixie Chicks, and this was before Trump. That was years and years before Trump. And you've seen conservatives have no problem canceling. They don't, like, and it's not to say that canceling is a bad thing. It's just that's how people respond. Like that's typically what a boycott is. Like that's where the term pretty much came from. If people collectively don't like something enough, you boycott it. Like if you didn't like to be taxed, you threw the fucking tea in the harbor. Like but nobody would say, oh, they you know, the Boston Tea Party was a part of cancel culture. Like no. So things that get attributed to us, like I know conservatives will say that they have thick skin, that they can take a joke, that they can, but from my experience and from what I've seen a lot is the exact opposite. And that's where I kind of get a little distaste from, you know, a lot of the MAGA movement and the conservative movement is the fact that there are things that, but the day will come, maybe the day will come that we do have somebody who does speak in a way that Trump speaks, speaking to a different audience, saying things that, because like the closest we got was Bernie, and like he was a broken record. Oh, the top 1%, the top 10th of 1%, blah 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 blah
while
blah.
he's in it.
Yeah, while he's in it, and so you have this distrust, and that's the closest we got, and even then it was it didn't cross the threshold. So it's like we're in a populist stage of American politics where the right won the race as far as it came to finding somebody to speak to a large demographic that says what they want to hear. Mitt Romney wasn't going to say it. Mitt Romney, when he said that 47% thing and that video leaked, it was over. Like that they say that's what ended Mitt Romney, was the 47% remark. And you know, and
Howard Dean ended on yeah.
So, like the bar was so low that if you got on there and said what Howard Dean said, and you get on and say what Mitt Romney said in a private setting, like the bar was so low to ruin your political career. But Teflon Don literally could say worse and it would catapult him.
But he doesn't really say worse.
But I mean, if you attributed what he has said, and if it was a Democrat that said the same exact
word, I don't think it's about Democrat or Republican. I think it's just there's something about him that transcends it, and I don't know what it is. I don't think it's about him being a conservative.
He's a symbol.
I think it comes down again to the people that control. Because look at what happened with Rashid Tlaib. She said some pro-Palestine stuff, and they canceled the hell out of her. Even in Congress, she got censured. That ain't happened in a long time. She can't even, you ain't heard shit from her. Right. She's quiet as a church mouse, sitting there crying.
And that's mainly what Democrats have done. Like Democrats, and even Democrats put a pretty much a gag order on AOC when she got elected, that she was super pro-Palestine and anti-Israel.
Gag order on her.
she you know, she was pretty much silenced and veered away from that, because most of the donors in the Democrat Party are Zionist, you know, Israeli donors. that, you can't have that stain in your party. So I mean,
Allegedly.
it's definitely not a party thing. So I mean,
Well,
Allegedly.
this whole Israel thing has caused a lot of confusion in all the parties, which is actually kind of comical to watch. Again, different topic for a different day. I'm going to wrap up my part, and I think we end the show because we're at 3 hours.
Okay.
I want to, if there's time where you want to come on a Truth Tuesday, which is set to an hour, that'd be great.
Okay.
I want to just make one comment, and I believe as though just based on what I'm seeing, like, and I hate to call one person out because I'm sure they're awesome, and I could tell Cash knows the person, but Priscilla, love you, and I'm going to use this as a learning experience. So Corey, for 3 hours, has been on here with us, and I believe as though Corey said he was 33 years old.
Mm-hmm.
The key in the beginning of the conversation was the fact that we have to start having conversations like this. Respect. And then like this, and earning each other's respect to have just an open-minded conversation, and words and tone matters. And there's been just a couple comments like, tell this 33 is not a kid. And based on what I've had a conversation with him, he is more intelligent than most of the 50-year-olds that I have a conversation with. This is a guy that I don't agree with in most cases. So from the only takeaway I can have from this, because I thought there was going to be fireworks at one point, and there clearly wasn't. This was actually a way better show than I could possibly imagine. When you are having conversations with the other side, and I can't even say that with you, but if you're having conversations with people that you disagree with, leading in with words, and I want to be honest, Kelly and I have this problem because sometimes it's just basic communication that is a problem. Talking down, and sometimes I'm guilty of it as well. It's like a parent-child.
Oh, there it is. See what you just said?
Sorry.
Leave Priscilla alone. You leave Priscilla alone.
I'm trying to be nice, and I'm not. I'm using this as a teachable moment. That if you start the conversation with this kid or let me teach you something, it will immediately go off the rails. So just realize that we can have a 3-hour conversation where we are realizing we have much more in common than we have different. And that's based off of initial tone, setting a precedent, which, trust me, Cash and I, if Corey would have came out with some dumb shit, Cash and I would have been ready to fucking pounce. No doubt about it.
But I actually really, really, really like him. And I really want you to be part of whatever we got going on in the future. I really, really enjoyed this. Thoroughly like you a lot. I think you're fucking awesome. And I want you to know something before we get off here too, bro.
Yep.
God loves you. Even if you don't know that yet or believe that, you know what I'm saying? God, not religion, not any of the books, the creator that allows you to breathe and see and smell and talk and think, all of that. The one that created you for that gave you that great fucking mind that you got. He loves you.
I respect that. I appreciate
God loves you. I don't want to say he or she. God loves you.
I appreciate it.
And so do I, my brother. And if you need me, you got me. All right.
Likewise.
So there's a thing we do, and when Cash pauses, both you and I are going to go woo. Okay.
All right.
Ready?
Unite. Don't fight. Be a street light, because only you could be the change you wish to see in the world. And when you get too stressed out, you got to remember to pray, America, because without God, everything falls apart.
Woo!
Here we go.
Brother.